Sale of Goods Act. We have already started with this introduction part. Let me take a quick recall. So, from the Indian Contract Act, we have this separate act called as the Sale of Goods Act. There it is repeat, here it is subsumed. So, subsumed from section 76 to 123 of Indian Contract Act. It's applicable only for sale of goods unless expressive. Sale of service is not included. It's not, this act is not applicable. If you're talking about sale of service, then go talk in Indian Contract Act. Take the provisions of that act. For pledging, take special contracts. For barter, exchange of goods, again go for Indian Contract Act. For mortgage of property, it's related to immovable, so go for Transfer of Property Act. So referring to some important terms, we have goods, which is nothing but movable property and includes all these lists. I'm not going line by line, already discussed in detail in earlier class. And excludes money. It's an exclusive exclusion. Clear idle exclude பண்றாங்க. Money is not included. Actionable claim, which is a unsecured debt, is also not included. Why actionable claim is not included here means because it is clearly included in Transfer of Property Act. That's why it's not included here. Consideration, or what we call here in terms of prices, money or money in terms of money. Here, even though we say that movable is the term related to goods and immovable is the term related to property, here also we use the term related to property, which is nothing but the ownership. Who holds the ownership? Which is, we are talking about the legal ownership. Okay. The form of contract can be expressed, implied, or in any other form. See, it's ultimately a contract. Okay, involving sale of goods. Deemed possession, probably when we talk about the promise by the supplier, promise given by the supplier, he has to transfer the ownership, the legal ownership of the goods, and along with that, he has to deliver the goods also. Possession has to be given. Who is actually possessing? The possession need not be with the buyer or need not be with the seller. It can be to an agent, carrier, or bailey of the buyer also. So this is also called as deemed possession. Okay. Then we were talking about sale and buyer and seller. Here we were discussing about two types of things we'll be discussing here. One is agreement to sell. You remember? Agreement to sell related to future or contingent goods, not the existing goods. Future or contingent goods. Whereas sale is the term related to current. That is specific, existing goods. Okay. Only the specific existing goods will be the part or the lawful object of the contract. Mercantile agent, yes, and the different types of agents also we have. The document of title of goods, it might be the proof of the possession where he can take the control over the goods. It's an unconditional overtaking and it's an evidence that the possessor has the right over the goods and the buyer is the having, because he is receiving the promise, right? Buyer is having the right to receive and seller's duty to transfer. List of documents, it can be bill of lading or delivery orders, finger certificate or all these. Okay. The following are not documents. Share certificate is not a document. Mate receipt is not a document. Okay. Property is nothing but right of ownership. And quality of goods. See, we are not talking about the quality like ISI and ISO and all. We are not talking about. We are talking about the quality which I am involved with respect to this sale of goods. So whether it's 10 rupees property or 100 rupees property or whatever it is. Okay. So when we talk about the quality of goods, it's including that state and condition only. It's not gender wise. Okay. We are not talking about quality and quality control. So we have to start with this topic, contract of sale. So it's nothing but contract of sale. Let me go word by word. This is quite important. Sale is transfer or agrees to transfer. It's nothing but transfer the sale. Okay, I'm transferring here. Sale like current cash considerations and all. Whereas if we talk about agrees to transfer is also considered as sale, but what happens is we'll say this is we are going to do that in future because the property is not with me. We are going to do that in future. It's actually not agreement to sell. It's agreement because the delivery will be done in later period. Please try to understand. It's not future or contingent goods. See, earlier page I was discussing two things we'll be having here. One is agreement to sell. Okay. One is sale. When sale is involved, when we call this as contract of sale, when existing or the specific goods are involved. Okay. When we say agreement to sell, we are talking about future or contingent goods. Here, agrees to transfer means it's an agreement where delivery will take place in the future. Please try to understand. Here, the goods is not in my hand. Okay. Let's see. The ownership which I hold only I can transfer to you. That's the contract of sale. In the case of agreement to sell, I don't have the ownership. Then how can I transfer? It's not possible. Okay. But whereas in this definition, we are saying that it's totally different. We are saying that we are going to agree to transfer the property where we are involved only with delivery will take place in the future. See, I'm ordering 1,000 chairs. How is it possible to deliver at immediate instance? See, I may be paying the full amount at one point of time, but how they can deliver all the 1,000 chairs? They cannot say that. Okay. So X sells the cycle to Y for 200. The ownership of the cycle has been transferred from X to Y for the price of 200. This is why it's called this as contract. And we also say here this includes contract to sell also, because the future goods and contingent goods will definitely change into existing goods. Agreement to sale at a future date, subject to certain conditions. Sale and agreements to sell. This is a very, very important heading. Probably, especially CMA Foundation, you may have twist because we have all these objective questions. You may have a twist over here. So, on what basis we are going to consider this one? The feature when the property is transferred. Okay, please give keen attention when the property is transferred. Immediate data, future data. Okay, what type of a contract this will be? Executed contract. What do you mean by executed? Both the parties executed. Okay, it might be express or implied, but what happens to this case? Agreement to sell. It's executory contract, which means both the parties yet to perform. Okay. Nature of goods ascertained and specific here it is future or contingent. Probably this one point will be helpful for you to distinguish this is sale and this is not agreement to sell, or this is agreement to sell and this is not sale. Nature of ownership, here you'll get absolute ownership. Yes, obviously it's an executed contract, right? இமீடியட்டா நீங்க போறீங்க கடையில போறீங்க ஒரு டீ வாங்குறீங்க ஒரு பென் வாங்குறீங்க ஒரு பென்சில் வாங்குறீங்க ஓவர் இட் பிகம்ஸ் யுவர் ப்ராப்பர்ட்டி இமீடியட் அப்சல்யூட் ஓனர்ஷிப் வில் கெட் பட் வாட் அபவுட் ஹியர் the person who is selling the goods is not having the ownership. So he will get the ownership, then only he'll get it transferred to you. Okay. Nature of delivery, immediate, maybe in installments, maybe in future, but the goods are specific here only in future because he has to make the goods. He has to wait for the harvest. Nature of performance, unconditional, here is condition. Risk of loss, usually who has to bear the loss? The owner has to bear the risk. Risk follows ownership. So who's the owner here? Immediately passes to the buyer. So buyer is the owner. So buyer has to face the risk. What about here? Usually seller, but this remains with the owner. If the ownership is transferred, I'm going to a carpenter and I'm asking for a table. Okay. He's going to manufacture or he's going to make the table only for me. He says that you pay the full amount, ma'am, I'll make the table. So I'm paying the full amount. He says the ownership is transferred. Okay. Right, just in rem, which means right against the whole world. You can please make a note of it. Right against the whole world, which means I'm the owner having the absolute right. Nobody in the world can claim for the ownership. Here it is just in personal, okay, which means the seller can raise or they can ask the right, the seller can ask the right only against the buyer. Okay, or the buyer can execute the right only against the seller. Resale of goods, usually it's not possible because seller is not having the ownership unless on agreement, probably perishable goods are stale item on the money case to say. Here it is possible. Seller insolvent, yeah, these 2 points important. Seller insolvent, what will happen? Consequences. If seller is insolvent, what the buyer can do? The buyer can record the goods from the official receiver or assignee. Yeah? Why? If the seller is insolvent, what the buyer can do? See, only the two parties involved. One party is seller, another party is buyer. Okay, seller becomes insolvent. What the buyer can do? He can recover the goods. From the, see, seller insolvent means seller is not having right on any of his assets because he doesn't have the assets. So who will be assigned? Or official receiver or assignee will be there. Now buyer is getting this right. What right? He can recover the goods that from that person. So and so. Why? Because he's the owner. Sale illa. Sale absolute ownership vandrudilla immediate buyerukku. Okay. What happens here in this case is ownership is not transferred. It's not probably it might be transferred only in the future unless on agreement. So he can claim only on some rateable dividend. Dividend means like penalty or compensation, whatever we did in Indian contract that will follow. Just think in the opposite angle. If buyer is insolvent, okay, he has to return the goods to the official receiver or assignee. When if the payment is not made. ஆமாம்ல payment make பண்ணியாச்சு ownership transfer ஆச்சுன்னா நீ யாரோ நான் யாரோ. Okay. Here he need not deliver the goods until he is breached by seller. What do you mean by breach? The seller is not performing. Okay. Probably he has to deliver or the other person. Buyer can sue for the damages. Here he can sue for the damages only. He cannot ask for them because the ownership is not transferred. Breached by buyer, he can sue for the price. Immaterial of possession. Please make a note of this point. Immaterial of possession means whether the goods are delivered or not, you need not worry about that. What the seller can do, he can ask for the price because ownership is transferred. What happens here in this case? Breached by buyer, seller, what he can do? He can sue for damages. Need not worry about who is having the possession of the goods. It's very, very important table. And please try in this angle, please try to highlight this line. An agreement to sell becomes sales when once the time is due or expiry of time and on fulfillment of the conditions. On these two situations, the sale will become, that is agreement to sell will become sales. Okay. So கொஞ்சம் careful பாருங்க. I'll go for the next study. This is the normal one, formation of contract. When the goods will be delivered, when the payment of price will be done. So just remember, I'm ordering 1,000 chairs. Okay. It will be delivered immediately. Delivered immediately means what? All the 1,000 chairs. நீங்க வீட்டுக்கு போறதுக்குள்ள 1000 சேர் வந்துரும் நம்ம வீட்டுக்கு. நல்லா தானே இருக்கு. 1000 சேர் எப்படி அனுப்புவாங்க? நீங்க வரி பண்ண வேண்டாம். நீ வீட்டுக்கு போய் சேரதுக்குள்ள வந்துரும். Okay, immediately. But when you will pay the price, you say, உடனே அனுப்புறோங்கிறான். வீட்டுக்கு போய் அதுக்கு பிறகு பே பண்ண. Future. Okay. Second, 1,000 chairs, how can I send it immediately? I'll send tomorrow. You pay the price immediately. Okay, so this will be done tomorrow, but I will pay the price now. Third, both immediately. Okay, ஒரு பென் வாங்க போறோம் அதுக்கு என்ன கார்கோலாம் புக் பண்ணுவீங்க பென் தானே. Fourth, both will be postponed. Fifth, both will be in installments. So there can be 5 modes how the contract can be formed. How many modes are here? 5 modes how a contract can be formed. Then we go for classification of goods. We have dealt this in detail in the earlier session. So we can classify this in 3 main ways. One is existing goods, one is future goods, and one is contingent goods. Under existing goods, I can talk about specific goods, ascertained goods, and unascertained goods. Unascertained goods are goods that are not identified or agreed upon at the time of making the contract of sale, but are just defined by description or sample and generally forms a part of the lot. You go to a TV showroom for buying a TV, you see all the TVs over there is nothing but unascertained goods. Okay. Second, ascertained goods is defined by interpretation. இதுல sound நல்லா இருக்கும், அதுல screen நல்லா இருக்கும், picture in picture இருக்கும், இதுல வந்து screen curvy இருக்கும், etc. etc. Okay. And ascertained goods are used in the same sense as specified goods because once it is ascertained, it most probably will become a specific goods. ஏன்னா அதை நீங்க வாங்குற ஸ்டேஜ்ல வந்துடுவீங்க. Okay. Specific goods are identified and finally, please highlight this word. Because of this word finally, we say that only specific goods are the lawful object to the contract of sale. Finally agreed upon at the time of making the contract. When you talk about the features of existing goods, see, ownership will be there. With whom? The seller. If I am the seller, I am having the ownership, then immediately I can transfer to you. You agree with me? First thing. Possession will be there. Okay, with whom? A seller. Probably if possession is not there, he might not be having all the 1,000 chairs in the showroom. 1,000 chairs showroom வச்சுட்டு என்ன பண்ண போறாரு? அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாரு, ஒரு கிலோமீட்டர் தள்ளி குடவுன் இருக்கு. அங்க காமிச்சிடு. Possession means he might not be having physically in hand. That's what he calls deemed possession. Possession by agent or wafing or whatever. And it will be in existence. He did not make or manufacture for you. Okay. For example, we have done this. Future goods, second category, second main classification. See, this is the main difference between existing and future goods. No ownership, no possession. It has to be manufactured or it has to be produced or it has to be acquired then after making the contract of sale. Please highlight this word, after making the contract of sale. So you cannot actually call this as a sale, correct? Sale is transfer of legal ownership. The seller is not at all an owner. Then how can you talk about contract? Okay, that's why we have this exception to the case. Actually, this is a legal maxim. Nemo that cure, we can just write this one. Neo that cure, I think not happened yet. not habit. உன்னோடதே இல்லைன்னா நீ எப்படியா விப்ப அப்படின்னு கேட்கிற மாதிரி வேற ஒன்றும் இல்லை. Okay. If it is not yours, how can you sell it? But this is an exception to this case because lossless future goods can be sold. We enter this as a agreement to sell, not a contract of sale. Please try to highlight. This is agreement to sell. Okay. So a contract to sell oil from the refinery is owned by him or not yet obtained from pressing of seeds. See, not yet obtained from pressing of seeds. Okay. For which he is not the owner. Okay. Should I take over? Contingent goods, the third category. Actually, contingent goods are future goods, but there will be some contingency. So the right to buy will occur only on happening of the contingency. So goods to arrive, truckla வந்துட்டே இருக்கு வந்தோன்னு உங்களுக்கு future crops, eggs. Okay. So probably I'm having a poultry farm. I have some 1,000 chicks with me. So each and every month I commit for 1,000 eggs. So one per chick. Okay. 1,000 eggs commit பண்றேன். அது eggs போட்டாதான் கிடைக்கும். But I commit. Okay. So three categories. Next we'll go for, this is often repeated. Destruction, which means perishing is also destruction. Destruction na fire accident மாதிரி ஏதாவது damage ஆகணும்னு அவசியம் இல்லை. Perish ஆகுதும் destruction தான். And what is the contract related to this specific? When it got destructed or when it got damaged before the sale or before the sale. What do you mean by sale? Immediate ownership will be transferred. See, whenever you see the word contract of sale, just fix in your mind, immediate ownership will be transferred. Buyer will become absolute owner. Okay. So in this says, before the sale means it becomes void. Why? Object இல்லையா எங்க நீங்க கான்ட்ராக்ட் லேண்ட் வாங்க. Okay. So even if a part perishes or damages, whereas after agreement to sell, but before sale, you have entered into an agreement because future goods or contingent goods. But before sale got damaged, so you can actually avoid it because it's not a contract, right? Agreement, so you can avoid it. But who will take the risk? The party responsible for the fault has to take the risk. It happens. The seller is not responsible, buyer is not responsible for the loss. Then the contract will be valid or void. Actually, from the buyer point of view, they have to treat this contract as void. From the seller point of view, you can avoid it. And a seller can ownership agreement to seller. Then you can avoid. Next, we'll go for ascertainment of price. What do you mean by price? Consideration. Now, see, when you write answers, CMA Foundation as of now, no issues. When you go for the interlevel, when you go for descriptive answers, only have to worry about this. When you talk about Indian Contract Act, you leave the word consideration. When you talk about sale of goods act, talk about the word price. Okay, this is how you can distinguish your answer. Ascertainment of price by mutual agreement. Payment of reasonable price in absence of agreement. Yes. Who can fix the consideration? Maybe from the promiser or from the promisee or any other party. If any other party is not committing or fixing the price, reasonable price. Consideration lawful points. Legal rules to consideration. Legal rules to consideration. All those points will apply here. And a third party can value. Okay. Sometimes we'll be having this, right? Earnest money, some advance amount has to be paid. Yes, if you're not committed to that or due date has arrived, we'll do the forfeiture and all. Okay. And it should be done in the prescribed manner because it's a promise. Ultimately, it's a promise. If you're delivering the goods in installments, then you have to do it in that manner, prescribed manner. Okay. If you want to change it, yes, you can change it. See, remember under the performance we were discussing innovation, alteration, revision, decision, அதெல்லாம் discuss பண்ணுவோம். அந்த cases எல்லாம் mutually நம்ம manage பண்ணிக்கலாம். Prevention of valuation for a third party. Yes, a third party is coming because he is going to fix the price. You are not allowing him to value it properly. Means the aggrieved party, he can sue. Okay. Non-delivery in time, this contract may be avoided because when we talk about sale, we are talking about ownership transfer and also delivery of goods. About you are not delivering in right time, so obviously it might be avoided. The subsequent headings, similar contracts are compared here. First, what about sale and bailment? I'm not discussing here because I have given a wider idea. So, how about sale and bailment? Bailment is a special contract. How about sale and hire purchase? When you talk about hire purchase, to certain installments, it will be considered as hiring charges. After that, we'll be considering this as installments paid for the loan, like, okay. Then, here, sale and contract of work and labor is not the same rule. When we talk about sale, we are talking about the goods involved. When you talk about contract of work and labor, we are talking about Service, employment service. So I think the first one is done. Can we just go to next heading? Condition and warranty. When we talk about goods, this one thing, this one heading, condition and warranty becomes a very important heading. Just imagine Diwali season. Wherever you go, whether it's a garment showroom or anything, you get this offer. Whether you're buying a TV, whether in Flipkart or Amazon, or you go directly in person to shops, you get an offer. Okay. You have a plan to buy a TV for your house. You go for checking all the brands TV. You go for checking the sound quality. You go for checking the screen display quality and everything. Okay. After choosing one, he says that if you buy for 60,000 rupees, அந்த பில் எவ்வளவு வந்திருக்கும் 59,500 okay, if you buy for 60,000 rupees, இல்லனா 50,000 வந்திருக்கும். If you buy anything for 10,000 addition, we'll give a Bluetooth speaker free. And that Bluetooth speaker works like what some 20,000 or 25,000. நல்ல குவாலிட்டியான speaker. The home theater இதெல்லாம் பார்த்திருக்கீங்களா Sony. And you can pay just 500 rupees or 600 rupees. Okay. What you will do? You can be free. What you can do? You're going to buy a TV. Along with that, you can get a Bluetooth speaker just for paying 500 rupees. That Bluetooth speaker worth 15,000 rupees or 20,000 rupees. What do you do? Definitely we think, okay, for a 2,000 3,000 extra, 60,000 plus, we'll buy it. Okay. You take home. Now only the important thing comes. You take home. The TV is delivered. The Bluetooth speaker, you took it home by hand. Then Bluetooth speaker, the car la pottu vandalam, auto la pottu vandalam. TV will be delivered only tomorrow. You came home along with a Bluetooth speaker. You check with your old TV. It's not working. Okay. What did it do? That's what is condition and warranties. Why you went to a shop? What goods you are purchasing? What do you want in that goods? Is that there? Yes, that's the condition. Okay. அது இல்லைனாலும் பரவாயில்ல அப்படின்னா என்னது அது warranty. You did not expect for Bluetooth speaker. But you're going to the shop, taking back to the shop. You're asking the shopkeeper, Bluetooth speaker கொடுத்தா work கூட ஆகல, ஆகுதா ஆகல. See, basic condition will be there. See, I'm not talking about this word condition. ஒரு எக்யூப்மெண்ட் வாங்கினா ஆன் பண்ணா ஓடணும்ல, அட்லீஸ்ட் ஏதாவது சவுண்ட் ஆச்சு கொடுக்கணும்ல. ஓகே, நீங்க அப்படி சவுண்ட் கொடுக்கும், இங்க போட்டா அங்க தெரு வரைக்கும் கேட்கலாம் சொன்னீங்க, ஒன்னும் வீடு பக்கத்துல கூட கேட்கல. வாரண்டியில அதை கேட்க முடியாது. But if the TV is not working properly, you can ask because it's a condition, because it's the main subject of your goods. That's why you have entered into a contract of sale. But if it is aligned to that, you'll call this as warranty, you'll not call this as condition. Usually, I'll give this example. I'm going to buy a dog. For what purpose? To safeguard my house. அப்ப எப்படி இருக்கணும் அந்த டாக்? பார்த்தாலே பயமா இருக்கணும்ல? துமி மாதிரி இருக்கணுமா? இல்ல. ஹஸ்பபீஸ் டாக் மாதிரி இருக்கணுமா? இல்ல. How it should be? நல்லா செம்மையா இந்த நாட்டு நாய் சொல்லுவாங்க பாருங்க. இந்த ராஜபாளையம். பார்த்தாலே பயமா இருக்கும். நல்லா செம்மையா பார்க்கும். That one person who is selling the dog, he says, this another one breed is there. It will bark. Also with that, you can take to the dog show. It will go for catwalk. Okay, another dog catwalk. ஆமாங்க மேம், ட்ரை பண்ணி பாருங்க. Okay, I bought this quality dog. I took it home. That dog is not barking. Case one, dog is not barking. வந்தவங்களை வந்து பயந்து ரூம்ல போயிடுது. என்ன பண்ணலாம் நீங்க? You can return the dog because that's the condition. What's the purpose you bought that good dog is good here? What is the purpose you bought the goods? Because it has to bark. If that is not condition, that purpose is not condition managed or said okay, then you can return because that's the condition. Second case, that dog is barking somewhere but is not doing catwalk. Okay, அப்ப என்ன பண்ணலாம்? You cannot return it because it's a warranty, because that's an extra attachment of the dog. There may be many qualities for the dog, but for which quality you bought that? You bought that goods. That quality has to be matched. Third one, okay. Did not bark. Okay, please try to understand. Did not bark, but in the catwalk, it got its first prize. Obviously, you are the owner for the dog. You got the first prize. Catwalk owner, they're not dog now. Enough price வாங்குறது நீங்க. How much? 1 crore plus Euro trip free. Okay, என்ன பண்ணுவீங்க? Catwalk பண்ண டாக் தனி ரூம் வைப்பீங்க. கரெக்டா? 1 crore free plus Euro trip. எல்லாம் free of cost. Now, can you return the dog? You see, you will not return. I'm not I'm asking a logical question. You will not. It's a hypothetical way. You should not. Ma'am, no, I'm not asking that. You have the rights to return, Anna. Yes, because the dog did not bark. இதெல்லாம் எனக்கு தேவையே இல்லையே. நான் என்ன எதுக்காக கூப்பிட்டேன்? சேஃப்கார்ட் பண்ணதுக்காக கூப்பிட்டேன். வாங்கினேன். So you go to the shop seller, the shopkeeper, you go there and you go for return of the dog. அவன் என்ன சொல்றான்? உங்களுக்கு 1 கோடி ரூபாய் வருஷத்துக்கு கேட் வாக் பண்ணி அப்படி இப்படி சொல்லிட்டு உங்களை மைண்ட மாத்தினாலும் you need not say okay because there's a condition. If the condition is not done or is not managed, you can return it. But what happens in the case of warranty? You cannot do it. So that's the main head. Right? Condition for warranty. வாரண்டி கொண்டு வரணும். வாரண்டி வந்து அது சும்மா ஒரு எக்ஸ்ட்ரா ஃபிட்டிங் ஃப்ரீயா ஒண்ணு வாங்கினா ஒரு ஃப்ரீ வந்து முடி. ஆ, அதெல்லாம் வராது. See, you cannot return the dog itself. அதுக்கு பிறகு தானே இதெல்லாம். டாக் குட்டி போட்டது தானே அதெல்லாம். கண்டிஷன், வாரண்டி, condition essential to the contract. Warranty is just collateral to the contract. If the condition is not fulfillment, it actually becomes a breach. If the condition is not fulfilled, means you can defeat it. Okay, which means you can make the contract cancelled, rescinded. Here, still the sale is not valid if the warranty is not satisfied. You can repudiate, you can claim for damages, or both. Here you can claim for damages only. Just fourth condition, fourth case. Let me imagine this way. The dog is not barking, or the dog is barking in a good way. You have taken for the catwalk. அது ஓடி ஒளையது இல்லாம உங்களை போட்டு கடிச்சு வச்சிச்சு. ஓகே, இப்ப சொல்லுங்க என்ன பண்ண முடியும்? You can claim for the damages. But if it is getting the first prize, zero to etc., so you need not return it. You need not give the cash prize and all. But if it is if that warranty is not satisfied, then you can claim for the damages. Okay. So it's impossible by law that you cannot claim now, you cannot do anything. So which act is governing this? This is governed by sale of goods act. Yeah, beautiful point. When you talk about a condition, you are talking about the goods, why you are buying the goods, so it's covered under sale of goods act. Whereas if you talk about warranty, it's covered under Indian Contract Act. Condition can be treated as warranty, yes, it's your wish. ஓகே, பார்க் தான் பண்ணலாம், பட் நல்லா கேட் வாங்கலாம் பண்ணிருக்கேன். 1 கோடி ரூபாய் இருக்கு, அதை வச்சு எத்தனை டாக் வேணா வாங்கலாம். இட்ஸ் யோர் விஷ், யூ கேன் ட்ரீட் இட். பட் வாரண்டி யூ cannot treat it as condition. Warranty is secondary only, you cannot treat that as condition. Okay. So this is often repeated question. X approached by a bus dealer to purchase a bus suitable for touring purpose. Y suggested a Volvo bus would be fit for the purpose. Who suggested? Y. Who's Y? The bus dealer. Okay. Relying upon, please highlight this word. The buyer, he did not have any knowledge of the bus, so he has to rely on the seller. Relying upon the statement, he bought the Volvo bus with a warranty period of 1 year. Later on, the bus turned out to be unfit for the touring purpose. X shall reject the bus and demand for the refund of the price because this is the condition. In the case of warranty, you cannot ask for thing and all, rescinding the contract. Rescission will not apply. But if there occurs any fault with respect to horn failure within this 1 year warranty period, you cannot repudiate the contract but can claim for replacement of damages. Okay. Types of condition: express condition and implied condition. It can be any number of conditions you can add. Your wish. Let me go for implied condition. Express condition there is a difference. Implied condition implied undertaking. See, I am having a shop. I am selling the goods. Means, what do you think about me? Okay, ma'am, வந்து இந்த ஷாப் வச்சிருக்காங்க. மேம் வந்து சேல் பண்ற ரைட்ஸ் இருக்குன்னு நினைப்பீங்க. ஆமா இல்லையா? So, who has the right to sell? The seller. And obviously, when you go for right to sell the goods in the future, you can go for agreement to sell also. All these rights will be there. So, if you are entering into a contract with the carpenter, and he is saying that it will take 1 month for me to manufacture this table for you. So, you completely rely carpenter, அவருக்கு தெரியும் எங்க wood வாங்கணும், etc., etc. Okay. If there is any defective title, the buyer has to return the goods to the true owner and shall claim the price from the seller. Okay, if there is a defective title, what do you mean by defective title? X is the owner. Okay. Y is the seller. இருக்கலாமா இருக்கலாம், தப்பு இல்ல. Okay. And A is the buyer. What this Y did was, he stole the goods from X. இது ஏக்கு தெரியாது. ஏக்கு தெரியாம வாங்கிட்டாரு. அப்போ டைட்டில் பாஸ் ஆயிருக்கானா டைட்டில் பாஸ் ஆகாது. Who has to pass the title? The real owner has to pass the title. Who's the real owner? X. X can be owner and seller, but when we say Y, either X has to give the permission or X has to, sorry, Y has to give the, X has to give the permission or Y has to buy the goods from X. ஆனா என்ன பண்ணிருக்காரு ஸ்டோர் பண்ணிருக்காரு டெஃப்ட் கேஸ்ல வந்து அப்போ இந்த கேஸ்ல வந்து ஏக்கு வந்து அந்த ஓனர்ஷிப் ஆஃப் குட்ஸ் பாஸ் ஆயிருக்குமான்னு ஆயிருக்கு ஆனா அது ஏக்கே தெரியாது கரெக்டா எனக்கு தெரியுமா திருட்டு பொருளை தானே வாங்கினேன்ட்டு so A is not aware of that. Even though A is not aware, did the ownership of goods transfer? No. That's what the heading here is. Defective title means the buyer has to return the goods. At one point of time, X finds that A has his goods. இந்த வண்டி வந்து ஏன் வண்டின்னு சொல்லிட்டு நான் கண்டுபிடிச்சிட்டேன் ஏ கிட்ட போய் கேட்கிறேன் அப்ப வந்து ஏ வந்து இல்ல இல்ல இதை நம்ம மன கொடுத்து வாங்கியிருக்க வைக்கிட்டு வந்து சொல்லி கேட்க முடியாது சொல்ல முடியாது because who is the owner he has the absolute owner. That's why we use the name called as absolute owner. Okay, to the true owner. Who's the true owner? So A has to return the goods to X, but he can gain the price from the seller. Okay. Second, sale of goods by description. Probably when you say I'm selling a cotton, which is an Egyptian cotton, base silk, Java sugar, jute base, இதெல்லாமே என்னது ஒரு specific dimensions ஓட ஒரு specific quality ஓட வரும். You say irtukada halwa, again, talapakati biryani. Now we've got this geographical indication name, Kanchipuram, Italy, that has some special ingredients for Italy pattern. அதுக்கெல்லாமே இருக்கு. So, if I'm selling the goods by description now, yes, it has to be taken to that. Okay. Sale by sample. Sometimes it happens. I cannot sell by description, but I'll have a sample in my hand. I will show that sample. And you can take that sample and you can match it. So, bulk shall match with the sample and the buyer. Yeah, please make a note of this point. The buyer has to be given reasonable opportunity to compare the bulk with the sample, and it should be free from defect. Okay, merchantable quality. Okay, should be free from defect. Okay. Fourth one, yes, both. Usually, the medical exam sale by sample and description, and this is the often repeated exam question. A contrast to sell B by showing sample. What sample he shows? See, sample and description is the heading. What sample he shows? So the quality of sunflower oil. And he describes as what? It's foreign refined sunflower oil. Okay, நீங்க ஒரு ஆயில் வாங்க போறீங்க செக்கு கோல்ட் ப்ரெஸ் ஆயில் செக்கு ஏன் நார்மல் மிஷின் ஆட்டினேன்னு கேட்டாங்கன்னா தெரியாதுல்ல நமக்கு அவங்க டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணும்போது தான் நமக்கு தெரியும் okay so one is by sample one is by description both combined see the word and is here and means what cumulative condition sale by sample and sale by description the oil when delivered it actually matches the sample bar but it's not foreign refined okay எப்படி மேம் கண்டுபிடிச்சீங்க பார்த்தாலே தெரியும் எங்க அப்பா அவங்க அப்பா அவங்க அப்பா எல்லாரும் 100 years நாங்க வந்து ஆயில் பிசினஸ்ல தான் பார்த்தா கண்டுபிடிச்சிருக்கோம் அப்படிதான் டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணும்போது நாங்க ஓகேன்னு சொன்னோம் பார்த்தா கண்டுபிடிச்சிருக்கோம் okay so here we can repudiate the contract even though only one condition changes. This is not implied condition. Next is quality and fitness. See, already we have discussed on this quality and fitness. Let me go for this example. X the customer had no knowledge about hot water bottles. He went to Y. Whose wife? He's a chemist. And he demanded a hot water bottle from him. Hot water bottle என்ன நினைப்பீங்க ஹாட்டா தண்ணி ஊத்துனா நல்லா இருக்கும்னு நினைப்பீங்கல்ல ஹாட் இந்த வேக்யூம் ஃபிளாஸ்க் இந்த மாதிரி Y gave a bottle to him. Whose wife? He's not an ordinary person. He's a chemist, clearly defining the person's nature. He's a chemist. He gave a bottle to him and stated that it was meant for hot water and not for boiling water. Okay. After a few days, by using the bottle, it burst and injured X-well. It was found that the bottle was not fit for use as a hot water bottle itself. பாய்லிங் வாட்டருக்கு ஃபிட் ஆகாது ஹாட் வாட்டருக்கு தான் ஃபிட் ஆகும்னு சொன்னா நார்மலா வந்து இவருக்கு எந்த நாலேஜும் இல்ல ஒரு கெமிஸ்ட ரிலே பண்ணி போயிருக்காரு பாய்லிங் வாட்டர் ஹாட் வாட்டருக்கு பாய்லிங் வாட்டருக்கு என்ன டிஃபரன்ஸ் okay so this was the case happened and the seller was held liable for damages okay because it burst that's why the case was uh, next one that may be related when you talk about quality and fitness that may be related to merchantability so how you say the goods uh, describes to the merchantable quality. Probably there will be a velvet cloth which is black in color. Velvet வந்து தனி மரியாதை இருக்கு. You know, boys wear corduroy jeans. கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா corduroy jeans? You know denim jeans. Denim na that material is denim. Usually நம்ம jeans na அந்த மாதிரி சொல்லுவோம். Denim jeans. You have heard about corduroy jeans? Feel a long, soft corduroy like stripes இருக்கும். வேர் பண்ணது இல்லையா ஆனா நிறைய கேர்ள்ஸ் தான் வேர் பண்றாங்க நினைக்கிறேன். quadri jeans. Probably நீங்க நெட்ல சர்ச் பண்ணி பாருங்க quadri jeans. The material different இருக்கும். It will not be like a thick material. It will be like a somewhat some ஒரு spongy material மாதிரி இருக்கும். Okay. It's a black velvet cloth. Black velvet cloth இவ்வளவு shiny, இவ்வளவு glossy-ஆ இருக்கும். It was damaged by white ants. We say it's not merchantable. Black velvet clothல white ants வந்து probably நீங்க ரொம்ப நாள் யூஸ் பண்ணாம அப்படியே மெயின்டைன் பண்ணாம வச்சிருந்தீங்கன்னா it will just change its nature. Horns supplied are scratched and damaged due to bad packing, not merchantable. Horns quality இருக்கு, but packaging தானே damage ஆயிடுச்சு. Scratched. So இதெல்லாம் check பண்ணணும். Okay. B. Usage of trade implied by customs. Yes, usually when you go for ready-made garments and all, each and every showroom will have the same customized standards. Okay. Wholesomeness. Yeah, beautiful topic. In addition to merchantability, you have to check for wholesomeness. This is applicable for eatables and provisions and all. This is often repeated question. X bought milk from Y, which had germs of typhoid. X son, what he did was took the milk and got infection and consequently died. You can recover the damages because germs of typhoid கொஞ்சோட தான் மிக்ஸ் ஆச்சு இல்ல தப்புதான். Okay, see whether it's a small quantity or that doesn't matter. That merchantability is gone. That's what I would say as wholesomeness. Like you, how you match with sample and the whole milk the same way. Okay, so it gets damaged and he died. Either often repeated, you know. And types of warranty the same way. We have express warranty, we have implied warranty. Implied, when we say implied warranty, it's actually presumed by law. Law சொல்லிருப்பாங்கல்ல அதை பேஸ் பண்ணி. Probably undisturbed possession. Undisturbed possession means once the seller has sold the goods to the buyer has the full rights to use the goods. So obviously, நீங்க வந்து டாக் வந்து கேட்வாக் கூட்டிட்டு போனீங்க. அவன் என்ன சொன்னா கேட்வாக் கூட்டிட்டு போலாம்னு சொன்னா கேட்வாக் கொண்டு போனீங்க. ஓகே, அங்க போனா ஓடி போகும்னு சொல்லவே இல்லையே. அவன் என்ன சொன்னா நான் கேட்வாக் கூட்டிட்டு போனா தான் சொன்னேன். நீங்க கேட்வாக்கே பண்ணுவீங்கன்னு நினைக்கலையே அப்படி சொன்னாங்க. Okay, it's presumed by law when you give a bird how the law takes it. You have to apply that. Okay. Freedom from encumbrances. ஆமா இல்ல ஒரு ப்ராப்பர்ட்டி உங்களுக்கு நான் சேவ் பண்றேன், ஒரு குட்ஸ் உங்களுக்கு சேவ் பண்ணா நீங்க என்ன நினைப்பீங்க? கிளியர் டைட்டில் நினைப்பீங்கல்ல. And danger is a nature and முன்னாடியே சொல்லியிருக்கோம். And quality and fitness by trade or usage is a normal point. Okay. Condition treated as warranty. Yes, you can treat the condition as warranty. The dog was not barking. Okay, but it got the first prize in catwalk and I got a free indoor tour. Yes, I'm treating this as condition. Condition can be treated as warranty. Warranty cannot be treated as condition. Okay. The dog did not bark. My condition is not satisfied. Actually, when your condition is not satisfied, you can go to the shop seller and you can ask for damages. You can cancel the contract, so on. But what happens the other way? Not possible. Then you can treat the condition as warranty under voluntary circumstances, under compulsory circumstances. Voluntary circumstances, an option. You can take the waiver, you can reject the rules, you can recover the damages. But whereas in the compulsory circumstances, நீங்க நினைச்சீங்க அந்த டாக் பார்க்கே பண்ணல அப்படின்ட்டு நீங்க என்ன பண்ணீங்கன்னா கிஃப்ட் பண்ணிட்டீங்க. Who are you to gift it? If it is your goods, you can gift it. You treated that dog as your dog, that's why you gift it. Correct? பார்க் பண்ணவே இல்ல, பட் அழகா இருக்கு. ஒருத்தவங்க வந்து ஃப்ரெண்ட் வந்து கேட்டாங்கன்னு சொல்லிட்டு கிஃப்டா கொடுத்துட்டீங்க. எப்படி நீங்க கொடுக்கலாம்? கண்டிஷன் சாட்டிஸ்ஃபை ஆகலன்னா ரிட்டர்ன் தானே பண்ணணும். கேன்சல் பண்ணதுக்கு ரைட்ஸ் இருக்கு, பண்ணிக்கலாம்ல. யூ டி நாட் டூ தட். Okay. So compulsory circumstances, in the case of non-severable, you cannot separate it. Or you have accepted the goods or parted with the goods. Example, gifted the goods. In this case, you can have to go for compulsory circumstances. You are treating condition as warranty, which means you cannot claim, which means you cannot cancel the contract, you can claim for the damages. Okay. Deemed acceptance, probably have given the acceptance or the reasonable time is over, or other acts like you have adopted or sold or pledged or gifted to anybody, all these you can see. This one important concept called as KVA tempted. If you are the buyer, you should be aware for which purpose or for what usage you are going to do it. You will be aware of it. So you should be aware what the goods you are going to get. So KVA tempted is let the buyer be aware. We'll go with the buyer side first. Is it duty of the buyer to make proper selection, to take care whether it will be suitable for him or not? He cannot blame the seller for wrong choice. Okay, இப்படி சொல்லிருப்பாரு அப்படி சொல்லிருப்பாரு. ஹாட் வாட்டர் பாட்டில்னு சொன்னாரு, பட் ஒரு லைன் அங்க இருந்தது நோட் பண்ணீங்களா? Let me go for that line. See this one. Let me clean the book once again. See, the customer X had no knowledge about hot water bubbles. So he's completely relying on whom? The seller, who is a chemist. This one example. Another one example, Volvo bus. The buyer had no knowledge about the Volvo bus. The seller, who is an expert in selling, he gave about the description. Okay, so this is about the headache. So கொஞ்சம் care எடுங்க மட்டும். So he cannot blame the seller for wrong choice. It is the duty of him to get satisfied before buying and serves his purpose on his skill and judgment. Okay. Whereas if we go for the seller angle, he will display the goods. Although the display பண்றது அவன் வேலை. He is not liable for bad or wrong selection. If he pays any loss also, he is not liable. ஓகே டிஸ்ப்ளே பண்றது மட்டும் தான் அவன் வேலை. கொஞ்சம் நோட் பண்ணுங்க. நான் அவர்கிட்ட கேட்கிறேன், எனக்கு தெரியாம கேட்டா பரவாயில்ல. நான் தெரிஞ்சு கேட்கிறேன்னா அவர் சொல்லணும்னு அவசியம் இல்லை. நீங்க ஒரு ஷாப் போறீங்க, அவங்க வந்து இப்படி அப்படின்னு டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்றாங்க. டிஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணும்போது நீங்க தப்பா செலக்ட் பண்ணீங்கன்னா யூஆர் செலக்டிங் சொல்லணும் அவசியம் இல்லை. ஓகே, then he's not supposed to know the purpose. Yeah, beautiful one. He's not supposed to know the purpose. He's knowing the purpose means he has to convey. He'll set our government. Okay. Probably we'll just go for, I'm going for buying a jerkin, which is like two-way use. Veil color, two-way use means what? For winter, I can use it. For rain, during rainy time also, I can use it. Two-way. இப்படி எப்படி மாத்தி போடலாம். I'm clearly saying that I want to use during the rainy weather. மழை நல்லா பெஞ்சாலும் அது தாங்கணும்ட்டு. If he knows the purpose, he has to tell that this will be suitable only for 3 hours or 4 hours. அப்ப நான் என்ன பண்ணுவேன்? நான் யோசிப்பேன்ல. That shop seller is clearly saying that it will be useful only for 3 hours, 4 hours rain. But what I am planning, I want to wear for the day long. Okay, இந்த மாதிரி கிளைமேட்ல எல்லாம் வந்து டே லாங் போட்டுக்கணும்னு பிளான் பண்றோம். அவன் சொன்ன பிறகு நான் வாங்கினா அது ஏன் தப்பா வந்துட்டான். Okay. Actually, he's not supposed to know. If he knows the purpose, means he has to clearly mention it. After clear mention of the features or quality of that product or that good, if the buyer is still buying, whose problem is this? He cannot blame the seller for wrong choice. It is your problem because you are buying the. Okay. And he's not bound to disclose the defects in the goods. இதுல எனக்கும் உடன்பாடு இல்ல. Okay. But law says clearly it is mentioned in that he is not allowed or he will not disclose the defects in the goods. Okay. But there are some exceptions. Fitness as to quality or use. I'm buying the raincoat. என்ன சொல்றீங்க நீங்க? Raincoat purpose தண்ணி உள்ள போகாது. Okay. Still, you can rely on seller skill or judgment. He says that this raincoat cannot be worn for the whole day. So raincoats வேர் பண்ணிருக்கீங்களா அப்படியே போட்டவங்க உள்ள ஒரு மாதிரி ஆயிடும். Okay, உள்ள வேறும் வெளியில வந்து தண்ணி உள்ள வராது. அப்போ will not feel better. Your skin will not be breathing. Okay, so seller, you are actually relying on seller skill and judgments means then no issues. Okay, then KV control will not be applicable. So Volvo bus case, you are completely relying on the seller, so it's not applicable. Okay. Sale under a patent or trade name. ஒரு நீங்க மில்டன் ஃபிளாஸ்க் வாங்குறீங்க என்ன நினைக்கிறீங்க? மில்டன் இஸ் a branded one. மில்டன் செல்லோ branded one. மில்டன்ல ஃபிளாஸ்க் வாங்குறீங்க vacuum water bottles. Definitely it will hold the hot temperature. Sold goods by description already we have discussed. This is not exception case one. Maintainable quality already discussed. Sold goods by sample already discussed. By description and sample both together discussed. Usage of trade discussed. And consent by fraud concealment. This fraud consent is not free. Then what happens? Contract becomes voidable. Fraud and voidable. Okay. So you are fraudulently concealing both the two. See, if there is a defect, you do not disclose it as a seller. But what the point here is, you should not do fraud. Okay, okay. So that's about the area. So the sub-conditional warranty. Can you please go through? The second transfer of ownership and delivery of goods. When we talk about contract of sale, two persons will be involved. One is the person who is selling the goods. He need not be the owner. Okay, he is selling the goods, seller. And another person is the person who buys the goods. But logical angle of understanding from the legal side, okay? Logical and legal side. Who is the owner? He only can transfer the ownership. Okay. So with that understanding and this seller and buyer understanding, there will be a two promise given by the seller. Open a solo and it's understood. One is the transfer has to, sorry, the seller has to transfer the ownership, and who's the owner? He has the rights to possess the goods. So once the seller, the owner, the seller is committing to transfer the ownership of the goods, means he is automatically committing that he will deliver the goods also. Okay. What's the buyer's promise? Simple. In a promise. Pay for the goods, Samadam. Okay. He has to pay for the goods. Now the problem arises. The buyer pays for the good. The owner is not transferring the ownership. That is, the seller is not transferring. What will happen? In the extra breach angle above. But the problem here is that the ownership will get transferred. If the buyer is paying the money, paying the price, but the ownership will get transferred immediately, no. Please try to understand. Now, பணம் கொடுத்தல ஏன் goods நான் சொல்ல முடியாது. Generally, what we think is, I have paid for goods, that's my goods. No. Who is the seller? He has the right to transfer the ownership, right? He just has duty. When he transfers the ownership, buyer will get the right to get the ownership. ஸோ பையன் வந்து அதுக்கு முன்னாடி பணம் பே பண்ணிருக்கணும். அது கரெக்ட் தான். பணம் பே பண்ணிட்டு வந்து கேட்கலாம். பட் என்ன மாதிரியான டேர்ம்ஸ் இருக்குன்னு பார்க்கணும்ல. So you have to be very keen on this. So relating to different types of goods we'll be discussing here. Transfer of ownership of goods means is nothing but passing of property. Passing of property means actually a passing the ownership rights. Proprietary rights is a seller right for price. When the seller is ready to transfer the ownership, he is actually demanding the promise. What promise? Demanding for the price, claim for the price. Time of passing is essential. Yes, timing is important, right? Buyer suit of action, if is not the seller is not planning to deliver the goods, is obviously buyer can file an action, because it might not be direct condition like to transfer along with delivery, but transfer of ownership, not only delivery of goods, because who can hold the ownership? Who can hold the delivery? Who can hold the possession? You know, owner can hold the possession. That's why we say absolute owner. Absolute owner na எல்லா rights அவனுக்கு தான். The risk passes with the ownership, which is prima facie. Please highlight this word. Usually, risk capital ko owner kitta irukkum. Why we say it's prima facie means, in case seller buyer is having the ownership, but it's the fault of the seller, then who has to bear the risk? Seller has to bear the risk. So it's prima facie only. So usually the owner has to suffer the loss. No recovery of possession by the buyer if seller is insolvent and ownership is passed, and buyer is insolvent and ownership is still with the seller. So this is normal point. So we'll go for transfer of ownership in different cases. First case, if the sale or if the contract of sale is related to specific goods, yes, you can transfer, right? Then at the time of making the contract, why specific goods? Then specific goods are the existing goods. Existing goods are ownership of possession of existence level. So automatically it will be transferred immediately at the time of making the contract. But the condition is, it should be specific goods. It should be in deliverable state. Please highlight. ஆயில் இருக்கு ட்ரம்ல, நீங்க எவ்வளவு கேக்குறீங்க? 10 liters கேக்குறீங்க. Deliverable state level. Please try to understand. Okay, it's an unconditional performance, because if you ask, he has to deliver. But it's not in deliverable state, which means it has to be delivered at some other point. Okay, so if one of the above said condition is not satisfied, probably it's not in deliverable state. So you're buying some quantity of oil, and it has to be filled in the drums. Okay, beautiful question. This one is slower for it. As per the terms of contract, X was required to fill the oil in drums, and then the drums were taken away by Y. X filled some of the drums in Y, in Y's vessels. Before the remainder could be filled, a fire broke out, and the whole quantity of oil was destroyed. People, who has to take the risk? It was held that the buyer must bear the loss of oil which was filled in the drums, because it has got to the deliverable state. I am buying 100 liters of oil. 100 liters or 57 liters of oil transferred to my receptacle. Receptacle in return use பண்ணுவாங்க. Okay. Receptacle the bottle or container or drum or whatever. Okay. So the receptacle வந்து என்ன பண்ணிட்டாங்கன்னா 57 liters transfer பண்ணிட்டாங்க. Now fire broke out. The 57 liters receptacle break பண்ணிட்டாங்க, transfer பண்ணிட்டாங்கன்னா receptacle இருக்கிற oil வந்து என்னோட ownership தான். So who has to bear the loss? Buyer. The remaining 43 liters of oil, you have paid the price, but it's not in deliverable state, it's not transferred. So who has to face the loss? Seller. Beautiful question. So and the seller must bear the loss of remaining unfilled drums. It's an African case, but obviously not an Indian case. Okay. Then in deliverable state, but has to be weighed or measured or tested or some similar act has to be done. So obviously, okay. Second, state of uncertain or future goods. If it is uncertain means you have to make it ascertain and you have to make it appropriate. Appropriate is you have to make it specific. Okay. Now let's come to two conditions. First is ascertained. Second is appropriated. Appropriated means make it finalized, which means make it as specific goods. How you do this ascertainment? Actually, it's nothing but you identify and set apart the goods. Actually, who will do this is the buyer will not do it, the seller will do it. Okay, it's a unilateral act. The exam often repeated. Okay, one word questions are all. It's a unilateral act. And then the property will be passed only after appropriation. So ascertainment has to be done. Please make a note. Then it has to be appropriated, which is it has to be made specific with the mutual consent of both the parties. And this is a bilateral act. செல்ல சொன்னா நீங்க வாங்கிடுவீங்களா? நீங்க ஓகே சொன்ன பிறகு செல்லர் விற்க முடியுங்களா? Okay, so it has to be done by the seller. Actually, what will be done is it will be separated from the lot with the buyer's consent. That's why we say this is a bilateral act. Okay, putting in suitable receptacle or delivering the goods and all. It can be express or implied, and the consent has to be given before or after appropriation. And seller state, yes, please highlight, we will become daily if not deliver. Why? It is appropriated means it becomes specific. It becomes specific means absolute ownership transfer. Absolute ownership transfer ஆகுறதுக்கும் பேமெண்ட்டுக்கும் சம்பந்தம் இல்லை, ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க. நான் பேமெண்ட் பண்ணாதான் ஓனர்ஷிப் எனக்கு கிடைக்கும்ங்கிறது சேலம் சாக்ல இல்ல. நீங்க லாஜிக்கலா நீங்க கடையில போனீங்கன்னா அப்படிதான் சொல்லுவாங்க, பணம் பே பண்ணி எடுத்து போங்க சொல்லுவாங்க. எனக்கு பணம் தராம போயிட்டீங்க. But what state of good tax says is if you are not, payment of money is immaterial. Ownership transfer ஆகுதுதான். So if you are appropriated with ownership transfer. இப்ப சொல்லுங்க bailmentல, okay, who is the bailer? Who is the bailee? Bailer is the owner of the goods. Bailee is the possessor of the goods. Here, once it's appropriated, what happened? Ownership is transferred to the buyer. So buyer becomes the bailer here. Seller becomes the bailier, often repeated question. And unconditional appropriation, because once it is been appropriated means definitely you have to, you cannot hold it for any other purpose. You have to deliver to the buyer or agent or carrier. Okay. So I have discussed all these examples. I need not go line by line. Third one, see, check the heading, sale on approval or sale on sale or return basis. Either we approve it or return it. Sale on approval on sale or return basis. Okay, உங்களுக்கு ஓகேன்னு அப்ரூவ் பண்ணுங்க, வேண்டாம் ரிட்டர்ன் பண்ணிடுங்க. Okay, you accept the goods, which means how you give the intimation. The டெலிவர் பண்ணும்போது சின்ன சைன் வாங்க, டெலிவர்டுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு சைன் வாங்க. Adoption of transaction, yes, please highlight. You did not accept it directly, but what happened? You sold it because you did not like it. Or you pledged it because it was in need of money. Okay, yeah. So adoption of transaction, selling, pledging, gifting, adoption another. You are not using it personally, but because of such circumstances, you say that this comes under your ownership. This comes under your ownership. Third, very, very important, you forgot to return it. நீங்க கேட்ட குட்ஸ் வரல, ஓகே, நீங்க சொல்லியிருக்கணும், எல்லாம் பிடிக்கல சொல்லியிருக்கணும், என்னாச்சு, ரிட்டர்ன் பண்ணணும், ரிட்டர்ன் பண்ண மறந்துட்டீங்க, which means what you have adopted to that. Failure to return the goods within the fixed or reasonable time without. Okay, this is third case. Now the fourth heading, sale for cash only or return basis. What was the earlier one? Third heading, sale on approval on sale or return. So you approve it or return it. Here you pay the cash fees, you become the owner, or you return it if you don't like it. Actually, this goes only by express agreement. பாருங்களா, ownership pay பண்ணனால ownership, the money pay பண்ணனால ownership வராது. கொஞ்சம் நோட் பண்ணுங்க, நீங்க லாஜிக்கலா திங்க் பண்ணவே பண்ணாதீங்க. அதான் சொன்ன சேலம் பிடிச்சா கொஞ்சம் டஃப். See, the situation will make you to think, okay, he paid, then you'll get the goods. So, pay பண்ணலன்னா செல்லர் என்ன நம்ம பண்ணலாம், பணம் கொடுத்து தான் கேட்கலாம், ஓனர்ஷிப் ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்ணலாம்னு சொல்ல முடியாது. Okay, when you can demand for the performance, only when you do it. Because contract talks about consideration. What do you say consideration is? Something in return. You do it first, then only you can ask for the performance of the other party. Okay. So only the express agreement you can talk about the cash paying and thing. Here there is no adoption of transaction. That's the only difference between the earlier case and this case. Gift பண்டிங்க இல்ல cash pay பண்ணாம sale நடந்த மாதிரி அர்த்தம். Okay. Yes, right to disposal. Actually, this is seller's reservation. Probably before entering into the contract of sale, the seller might be saying, நீங்க pay பண்ணா மட்டும்தான் நான் ownership transfer பண்ணுவேன். Yes, express agreementல இல்லைன்னா நான் dispose பண்ணிடுவேன். So it becomes conditional appropriation. Ownership right pass only after fulfillment of the condition. Yes, you need not worry about the delivery of it. Even though the seller might have delivered the goods, possession மாறி இருக்கும். ஆனா ownership மாறணும் அவசியம் இல்லை. Condition fulfill ஆனா மட்டும்தான். There are some basic presumptions. What do you mean by presumption? You did not check whether this is right or not. Yes, direct கண்ணை மூடிட்டு assume பண்ணணும். Okay, you did not check about the validity. Assumption also you have to check the validity. Presumption you did not check for the validity. So if you have this bill of lading or right there receipt means you believe that is his. Okay, so prima facie. Risk follows ownership, often repeated, especially for CMA inter. Risk follows ownership. We use the maxim respirit demino, the loss falls on the owner. This follows ownership, follows from the maxim respirit demino, which means the loss falls on the owner. If a problem is யார் owner. நாலு கேஸ் பார்த்தோம்ல ஸ்பெசிபிக் குட்ஸ்க்கு ஒரு மாதிரி கண்டிஷன் குட்ஸ் ஃபியூச்சர் குட்ஸ் ஒரு மாதிரி சேல் ஆன் அப்ரூவல் ஆர் ரிட்டர்ன் டு வேற மாதிரி கேஷ் ஆன் அப்ரூவல் ரிட்டர்ன் வேற மாதிரி ஓகே loss or damage obviously when you talk about risk falls on the owner means you're talking about the loss or damage towards the back okay. So there may be some exceptions. Probably when you enter into the agreement itself, you say that இதெல்லாம் முடிஞ்ச பிறகுதான். See, remember the contingent contract. நான் goods வாங்கிடுறேன். பட் எனக்கு வந்து ஷிப்ல ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் ஆயிட்டு எனக்கு கையில வந்து செய்யணும்னு சொல்லுவாரு பையன் contingent contract. அந்த மாதிரி எல்லாம் வந்து see after the contract, what the Indian Contract Act says is the rights and liabilities, whatever you discuss between the two parties, you can have it on your own, on a legal arm. Okay. So it can be agreement between the parties. In case of any default or delayed delivery, probably that can be adjusted. Legal penalty கேக்குறது, whatever it can be. Okay. This heading, transfer of title by non-owners. Non-owners title transfer பண்ண முடியுமா? Which means ownership pass பண்ண முடியுமா? No. But there are some exceptions to the case where the owners, non-owners can transfer. First one, non-owner by owner by estoppel. You remember estoppel? What do you mean by estoppel? A situation may be created and it makes the other party to believe that he's the owner. Okay. ஒரு காரை வச்சு நான் சுத்திட்டே இருக்கிறேன் நீ என்ன நினைப்பீங்க என் கார்னு நினைப்பீங்க என்ன வேணா பண்றோம் அந்த காரை வச்சு அப்ப ஏன் கார்னு நினைக்க மாட்டீங்களா சோ சிச்சுவேஷன் இஸ் கிரியேட்டட் அது ரியல் ஓனர் பக்கத்துல இருக்காரு அது அவங்க கார்னு சொல்றாங்க அப்போ இட்ஸ் மேட் டு பிலீவ் தட்ஸ் மை கார். Okay, so non-owner or owner by estoppel. Second one, mercantile agent is completely follows from law of agency. So we have discussed over there. I'm not discussing here. One of several joint owners. So sometimes it happens. மூணு நாலு பேர் சேர்ந்து கார் ஓன் பண்ணிருக்காங்க யாரு கையில இருக்கோ கார் அவங்களுக்கு தான் நினைப்போம். Okay, so myself A, another person B, another person C, we jointly together own a BMW. இது எங்க நிக்குதுன்னா என் வீட்டு வாசலே நிக்குது. Okay, உங்களுக்கு தெரியுமா BNC ஓனர் இருக்கு. Only you might be thinking only A is the owner. Okay, please see the document you try to understand. ABNC. A person in possession under a voidable contract and not rescinded. Beautiful on a point. A person in possession under a voidable contract. See, what do you mean by voidable contract? Try to recall all the provisions what we discussed in Indian Contract Act. What do you mean by voidable? It will be valid only after proving it is not valid, it will become void. Which is void. That's what is a void. So, a person is having a possession and that contract is a voidable contract, he has to rescind it. He has the option to rescind it. He's not rescinding it. அப்ப என்ன ஆகும் ஸ்டேட் பண்ண ரைட்ஸ் இருக்குன்னு வச்சுக்கணும் நான் ஓனர் இல்லையா so that's about this point. Seller in possession is obviously seller in possession means he has to have that document of title of goods. அதெல்லாமே after sale. After sale, who is the owner? Buyer is the owner. He becomes the bailey, but he holds the document of title of goods. But he sells for himself or by mercantile agent. The perishable nature, பணம் கொடுக்கல. See, பணம் கொடுத்த பிறகு நான் வந்து குட்ஸ் தரேன்னு சொல்லலாம். பணமே தரல ஓனர்ஷிப் ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் ஆயிடுச்சு பணமே தரலாம் இப்போ நான் குட்ஸ் பணமே தரலாம் ஓடி போயிடுவான் என்ன பண்றது வேற என்ன பண்றேன்னா பணம் கொடுத்தோன்னா நான் டெலிவரி பண்ணேன் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஹோல்ட் பண்ணிடுவேன் ஓகே So the buyer buys at good faith without notice of the previous sale, then it's fine. எப்பவுமே good faith, principle of good faith வாங்கணும். So that's about this point. Then buying possession after sale, it's fine. Buying possession after sale, where a buyer buys or pledges or other act by himself, yes, definitely he can do it. Unpaid seller, this is the next topic 3.4. I'll discuss that later. And some other acts, like the sale is done in the case of insolvency, the sale is done by official assignee or receiver, or in the case of company, the liquidator will take the role. The finder of lost goods, we have already discussed the game of lost agency, pawn or pawning condition. You remember the pledgee will sell the goods if the pledger is not paying by due date. இப்போ லோன் அமௌண்ட் பே பண்ணலன்னா நோட்டீஸ் அனுப்பிச்சு பார்ப்பாரு, ரீசனபிள் நோட்டீஸ்ல அதுக்கு புதுசாக சேல் பண்ணி. அப்போ ஆக்சுவலி the pawn broker, okay, the pawnee is the non-owner on the case. So till here, transfer of ownership is over. We have two headings here. One is transfer of ownership, one is delivery of goods. Transfer of ownership is done. Can you please go to here? Delivery of goods. Please highlight this word voluntary transfer of possession to the buyer. So who has to do this act? It's an act, right? It's an act of delivery. Who has to do this act? Seller to the buyer. Okay. Actually, seller means the person may not be the owner, but the owner might have authorized, right? So he will become the person who has to deliver the goods. No unfair means, which means what? Not by fraud, not by not free consent at all. Either to the buyer or you can go to the authorized person. So it's a duty for the seller to deliver on agreed terms to the buyer, and the buyer has to accept and pay for it. Non-concurrent conditions like payment of money and delivery of goods இதெல்லாமே சேர்ந்து வரும். Okay, நீங்க deliver பண்ணும்போது நான் pay பண்ணிக்கிறேன். That depends on, okay. Types of delivery often repeated and very important. Actual or physical delivery. Okay, the physical possession either to the buyer or to the authorized agents. Probably X sold and delivered 10 tins of oil to buyer. Physical delivery. Physical கையில கொடுத்தது. Authorized agents கிட்ட. First, second. Symbolic delivery is no physical possession. It's just an act of indication or just a symbol only. Probably giving the godown keys or transferring the document of title of goods. Now acknowledge பண்ணி வாங்கிக்கிறது அந்த மாதிரி. Third one. Okay, constructive delivery. Okay, or delivery by atonement. The third person's acknowledgement will be given on behalf of the seller. You are having this in the godown. உங்களோட godown இல்லைன்னா இன்னொருத்தவங்களோட godown, that doesn't matter. Whether you have the control over the godown or whatever it is, or you give the rent for the godown and you store the goods, stock keeping area மாதிரி, warehouse மாதிரி, எப்படி வேணாலும் இருக்கட்டும், that doesn't matter. But who is having the control over the goods? The godown keeper will be there. So probably he has to acknowledge, saying that he is giving the goods. So that can be a godown keeper or carrier or warehouseman. This is what you call as the term constructed delivery, or he has to turn that. So majorly we have three types of delivery. Effect of delivery often repeated. Part delivery. Actually, part delivery is not a good delivery, but it has to be severed. Severed means it has to be separated and given. வீட்டு ரைஸ் வாங்குறேன், வீட் தனியா ரைஸ் தனியா தான் நீங்க தரணும்னா கொடுக்கலாம். Can be severed. Buyer to apply for delivery. Yes, delivery only payment is made, obviously, unless explicit. Place of delivery. Obviously, the buyer has to clearly mention where it has to be delivered, at what time, etc., etc. Okay. Fourth one, reasonable time for delivery is there and tender to delivery. What do you mean by delivery? Performance, right? Two type of performance. Okay, actual performance, accepted performance. Accepted performance in the word na tender performance. Okay. So accepted performance எல்லா பாயிண்ட்ஸும் இங்க அக்செப்ட் ஆயிடும், லிங்க் பண்ணிடும். Goods in the possession of a third person. Yes, constructive delivery. Obviously, that person has to transfer on behalf of the seller. Who has to bear the expenses? By the seller. Please highlight till the deliverable state. Often repeated. Who will bear the expense? What the act says is the expenses till the deliverable state has to be borne by who? The seller. அதுக்கு பிறகு கூட்டு போறது எக்ஸ்ட்ரா எக்ஸெட்ராலாம் என்னது பையன் தான் பார்க்கணும். இது வந்து எக்ஸ்பிரசிவ் கண்டிஷன் இல்லைன்னா ஏதாவது எக்ஸ்பிரஸ் பண்ணாங்கன்னா you have to. Okay. Delivery of wrong quantity often repeated. Probably what do you say wrong quantity? I'm ordering 1,000 shares. Okay, the person, the shop seller keeper is transferring only He is ready to deliver only 900 short delivery. What you can do? You reject it completely. Or என்ன சொல்றான்னா இந்த ட்ரக்ல 900 தான் ஃபிட் ஆச்சு பின்னாடி ட்ரக்ல 100 வருது அக்செப்ட் இட் டீசனபிள் தானே இட்ஸ் அப் டு யூ யூ கேன் அக்செப்ட் இட் ஆர் ரிஜெக்ட் இட் ஆர் யூ அக்செப்ட் அண்ட் பே அட் த கான்ட்ராக்ட் இட் ஓகே else he says you ordered 1000 chairs but only 900 is available அப்ப நீங்க என்ன பண்ணுவீங்க and say I'm having a very big hall convention hall like where all the programs will go இந்த ஆர்டரிங் ஆஃப் ஷேர்ஸ் நல்லா இல்லைன்னா அந்த ஹாலோட லுக்கே போயிடும் அப்ப நான் என்ன பண்றேன் நான் 1000 சேர்ஸ் 1000 சேர்ஸ் வேணும் ஸோ வாட் ஐ டூ ஐ ரிஜெக்ட் இட் ஓகே ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஒன்னா செகண்ட் எக்ஸஸ் டெலிவரி ஒன் அனதர் 100 shares are there he says no 100 இருக்கு வாங்கிக்கிறீங்களா yes you can accept it how you can accept it you can accept the correct quantity ஏன்னா நீங்க ஆர்டர் பண்ணது 1000 தான் or you can accept the whole quantity and pay you have to pay for the remaining right or reject the whole it's your wish so, மூணு ஆர்டர் இருக்குப்பா என்னது you accept the correct quantity or you accept the whole quantity. Whole quantity means what? 1100 shares and pay for all 1100 shares. இல்ல நீ தானே வாங்கிக்கோன்னு சொன்ன நான் 1000 தான் பே பண்ணுவேன் 100 சும்மா கேட்க முடியாது ஓகே அது எப்படி கன்சிடரேஷன் இல்லாம கான்டாக்ட் ஆகும் அண்ட் தேர்ட் யூ ரிஜெக்ட் த third case mixed delivery which means different descriptions are there and it's mixed you accept the correct quantity and or you reject the so two options are there. So this is delivery of wrong quantity. This is often repeated in the மூணுமே வந்து one word questions objectiveக்கு கொஞ்சம் கீனா இருங்க short delivery, excess delivery and mixed delivery. Let me take across once again. Kindly join. In the case of short delivery, you have two options, either reject or accept and pay. In the case of excess delivery, accept the correct quantity or accept the whole quantity and or reject the whole. Reject the whole. Okay. Third, mixed delivery, which means different description, accept the correct quantity or reject the next delivery of goods by installments actually is not a good delivery. But unless agreed, okay, it's fine. Delivery to a carrier or warp finger, it's not what you call as transfer, it's called as transmission. In a law body is accepted. Okay. So you can directly send to the warehouse or something like that. Deterioration of goods during transit. Deterioration damages. Epo during transit. Who has to bear the risk? Bear the loss. Risk follows ownership. Okay. Risk de demino. Okay. So who has to bear the risk? Risk follows ownership. So buyer has to bear the risk. If it is a specific goods, then depends on what type of agreement. So incidental losses will be borne by the buyer even if the seller senses own risk. Okay, incidental loss, loss. Okay. Incidental loss, not accidental, incidental loss. Yes, please highlight this point. Examination of goods. Even though you're buying everything, when it arrives at your place, it is your duty. See, it's a duty. You have to examine the goods and you have to check whether it is matching with the sample, whether it's just matching with the description, etc., etc., etc. And the seller has to give reasonable opportunity for examination. நான் செக் பண்ணதான் சொல்றேன் அவன் கிளியரா அழகா பேக் பண்ணி கொடுத்துருக்கான் நான் என்ன சரி ஐ பாட் அ கிஃப்ட் ஓகே ஃபார் மை ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் வெட்டிங் நான் வந்து கிளியரா சொல்லிட்டேன் ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் வெட்டிங்க்கு வேணும்ட்டு பட் எனக்கு வந்து அன்பேக் பண்ணினா நான் செக் பண்ணி சொல்லியிருப்பேன் இது கரெக்டா நான் ஆர்டர் பண்ணது இருக்கான்ட்டு அன்பேக் பண்ணாம அன்பேக் பண்ற ஆப்ஷனே தரணும் ஸோ செல்லர் ஹாஸ் டு கிவ் ரீசனபிள் ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி ஃபார் எக்ஸாமினேஷன் இட்ஸ் அ பையர்ஸ் டியூட்டி பட் அட் த சேம் டைம் செல்லர் ஹாஸ் த டியூட்டி டு கிவ் ரீசனபிள் ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி exam. Okay, so it's often repeated question. Acceptance of delivery is, what do you mean by acceptance of delivery? Accepting the performance. Okay, buyer has to intimate. Act of the buyer, like probably adoption, like the buyer is selling or using or altering the goods. Return of goods by the buyer for a reasonable time without intimating the goods. Yes, without intimating the seller, obviously. It is considered as you have accepted. A failure to return. Miscellaneous, probably have to intimate right fine அதுக்காக ஆட்டெல்லாம் ஏற்றி அனுப்பணுமா தேவையில்ல rejection of goods alone is sufficient. It's not the liability for the buyer to return the rejected goods. Acceptance of goods is the final asset. Receiving of goods does not imply acceptance. Please highlight. கொரியர் வர வந்து என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா அதெல்லாம் எனக்கு தெரியாதுங்க உங்க புக்ஸா என்ன தெரியாது நீங்க சைன் போடுங்க எடுத்துட்டு போறேன் வேணாம்னா நீங்க அங்க அப்ளை பண்ணிக்கோங்க ஆன்லைன்ல அப்ளை பண்ணுங்க ரிட்டர்ன் அப்போ எனக்கு சம்பளம் நான் சொன்னா நீங்க என்ன பண்ணுவீங்க So that's what happens with Amazon and Flipkart, right? அதெல்லாம் ஓப்பன் டெலிவரின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஆனாலும் என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க? They'll just get the OTP and okay. Completion of contract, buyer's acceptance and payment of goods. Yes, both has to be done. Then only the contract will get completed. Please highlight. Please highlight. Just the buyer is paying the goods. Is the contract over? No. Is the contract gets discharged? No. Please make a note of it. If the buyer is paying the goods, the contract need not get completed, need not get discharged. The buyer has to accept the goods. Beautiful point. What's the seller's position? He becomes a bailey on failure to take the business, obviously. And charges has to be paid. You can recover the charges. And buyer's liability will be there for negligence or refusing to deliver and all. Unwillingness to take the delivery after seller's request, where he will be liable for any loss and reasonable charges. This is nothing but attempted performance. Please highlight. Performance la rendu category பார்த்திருக்கோம்ல. So one is actual, as per the promise it goes on, as per the timeline it goes on. But whereas if we talk about attempted performance, I am coming to take the delivery. I am coming to give the delivery from seller point of view. The buyer is not accepting, which means it's the unwillingness to take the delivery after seller request, where he'll be liable for any loss and reasonable charge. Who will be liable? Buyer will be liable. See, நான் செல்லர் உங்களுக்கு நான் வந்து டெலிவர் பண்றதுக்காக வரேன். நீங்க பையன் நீங்க அக்செப்ட் பண்ணணும். ஓகே, நீங்க நீங்க ஏன் அக்செப்ட் பண்ணல? பிகாஸ் யூ மைட் ஹேவ் சம் லாஜிக்கல் ரீசன்ஸ். என்ன சொல்றீங்கன்னா, நீங்க செக் பண்ணவே முடியல, நான் ஏன் அக்செப்ட் பண்ணணும்? கரெக்ட். இதெல்லாம் இல்லாம பர்ஃபெக்ட்டா நீங்க சொன்ன டைம் நீங்க எல்லாமே செக் பண்ணிட்டு வாங்கலாம்னு இருக்கு. பட் யூ ஆர் நாட் அக்செப்டிங் தட், விச் இஸ் யூ ஆர் நாட் ஷோயிங் அ வில்லிங்னஸ். அப்போ செல்லர் சைட்ல இட் பிகம்ஸ் அன் அட்டெண்டட் பெர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ். ஸோ செல்லர் நீட் நாட் லூஸ் எனிதிங். Seller need not lose any rights. So where he will be liable, buyer will be liable for any loss and he can charge the reason. நாங்க அது கொண்டு வந்திருக்கேன்ல, நீங்க சொன்ன ப்ராடக்ட் தானே. சேல் பை சாம்பிள் பண்ணீங்க, கரெக்டா மேட்ச் ஆயிருக்கு. டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷன் கரெக்டா மேட்ச் ஆயிருக்கு. இந்த டைம்ல சொன்னீங்க, கரெக்டா கொண்டு வந்திருக்கேன். We are not willing to accept it. It's your problem, not my problem. So you have to pay for the charges, courier charges or truck charges or this. Beautiful point. Okay. So, practical problems you can manage. This can please go through. Very famous heading, unpaid seller. Who's an unpaid seller? Please try to understand. Who's an unpaid seller? Seller is not paid. Okay. When we were talking about the promises from the seller and buyer point of view, seller is ரெண்டு promise சொல்லிட்டோம். Okay. One is transferring the ownership, the legal ownership of the goods, and another one, implied one, delivery of goods. When we talk about the buyer's angle, he has only one promise, which is payment of price. His promise becomes the seller's right. Am I right? இவனோட ப்ராமிஸ் தான் அவனோட ரைட். ஓகே. So ultimately, if the buyer is not ready to pay, which means what? Not ready to make the performance, not ready to pay the price, what the seller can do? Which means what? The seller is now having a new status called as unpaid seller. அப்ப நீங்க ஆன்சர் பண்ணும்போது, கொஸ்டின்ஸ் வரும்போது ஆன்சர் பண்ணும்போது, you can clearly give the seller with the status unpaid seller னே சொல்லணும். இந்த ஆங்கிள் அப்ரோச் பண்ணுங்க. Unpaid seller, if not received or tendered the whole price. What do you mean by tender? பையர் பணம் பே பண்ண வரா, இப்ப வேண்டாம்னு சொல்றோம் அப்படின்னா அட்டெண்டட் பெர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ் ஆயிடும்ல. ப்ளீஸ் ட்ரை டு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட். பெர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ்ல ரெண்டு பெர்ஃபார்மன்ஸ் இருக்கு. பையர் இஸ் நாட் பெர்ஃபார்மிங், which is breach. Buyer is coming to perform. Seller says you need not pay the money. அப்ப இது யாரோட ஃபால்ட்? செல்லரோட ஃபால்ட். அந்த மாதிரி பையர் பண்ணிட்டு கொடுக்கும். ஓகே. Probably just think this is a credit sale, credit purchases. Buyer வந்து ஒரு 3 months time எடுக்கிறார். And the seller, you have accepted the credit period for 3 months. இப்போ வந்து நீங்க சொல்லக்கூடாது பையர் வந்து பணம் பே பண்ணலாம் அன்பே செல்லர். Because he has given the time period. It is from your side concern, mutual concern. Okay. So not receive or not tender the whole price. Please highlight this word also. ஒரு part payment தான் பண்ணிருக்காரு, part payment பண்ணல. Even though it's not paid full, it will be called as unpaid seller. Even the negotiable instrument is this one. Okay. X sold certain quantity of jute to Y for 10,000. Y paid 5,000 and failed to pay the balance. The whole price is not paid. Here, seller is not a bailey, often repeated question, because there is no specific purpose to deliver the possession. பேஸ் லைன் இருந்துச்சுன்னா ஓனர்ஷிப் ஒருத்தர்கிட்ட இருக்கணும், பொசிஷன் ஒருத்தர்கிட்ட இருக்கணும். இங்க வந்து நம்ம செல்லரை பெய்லின்னு சொல்ல மாட்டோம். எப்போ அன்பே செல்லரா இருக்கும். Why the seller is holding the goods? Because ultimately, what this person see ownership transferred, but the seller is still having the possession of goods. Buyer is not paying the money. என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க? நீ பணம் பணம் see ஓனர்ஷிப் கொடுத்தாச்சு, பொசிஷன் கொடுத்தாச்சுன்னா பையர் பிடிக்கவே முடியாது. என்ன பண்ணுவீங்க? பணத்தை பொருள் எடுத்து. It's very logical and law says it's accepted. Unpaid seller here you cannot treat him as bailey. Law says you should not treat him as bailey. Okay, so there is no specific to deliver the possession, so you should not treat him as bailey. And it's not applicable if the rights are lost. Probably you wait to accept the payment, Elena, you have given the credit period, then you cannot execute all these things. When you become an unpaid seller, you have certain rights. One is rights against the goods you have, another one rights against the buyer personally. When you can execute this one, if the delivery is not done, you can please make a note of it. If goods are not delivered to the buyer, then obviously என்ன பண்ணலாம் குட்ஸ் வச்சு மறக்கலாம். ஆமா ரைட் கரெக்ட் தானே. குட்ஸ் டெலிவர்டு அப்ப என்ன பண்ணலாம்? ஆப்வியஸ்லி பணத்தை கொடுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு வாயால கேட்க தான் முடியும். ஓகே, but the classification here under this right is in this angle whether the property is transferred or not. Property means what? No, legal ownership. Goods is ஒரு ஐட்டம் தான். ஆக்சுவலி 10 essentials of a contract இருக்குல்ல, நல்ல அந்த பாயிண்ட் எடுத்தீங்க. 10 essentials of a contract இருக்குல்ல, அதுல வந்து lawful object இருக்குல்ல. சேல் ஆஃப் குட்ஸ் ஆக்ட்ல lawful object எடுத்து தெரியுமா? குட்ஸ் இல்ல, லீகல் ஓனர்ஷிப் இருக்கு. டெலிவரி கூட அதோட ஒட்டி வரதுதான். ஏன்னா who's the owner, he will have the rights to possess. So டெலிவரி கூட செகண்ட் ஒட்டி வரதுதான். லீகல் ஓனர்ஷிப் ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்றோம்ல, அதுதான் lawful objective. If the seller is not having the legal ownership, he cannot transfer unless mercantile agent, etc., etc. So property passed to the buyer or not passed to the buyer. If property is passed to the buyer, அப்ப என்ன பண்ணலாம்? Right of lien. Lien means vesting rights. Lien means vesting rights. Vesting means holding rights. Holding. Now வச்சுக்கலாம். Right of stoppage in transit. See, I don't have it in possession. Even the buyer is not having the possession, but it's in between. Transit goods transitல இருக்கும்ல. And right of resale. In the move right to execute பண்ணலாம் எப்போ? When the property passed to the buyer. Property passed to the buyer. Second category, property not passed to the buyer. அப்ப என்ன பண்ணலாம்? I can withhold the delivery. I can execute right of late. I can execute right of stoppage in transit. All the three. Probably it may look like it's overlapping. Okay. And right against the buyer personally when the goods are delivered. Okay, goods கையில இல்ல, ownership கையில இல்ல, என்ன பண்ண முடியும்? நீங்க கேஸ் தான் போட முடியும். Sue for the price. Okay. So we'll go for the rights in detail. First one, right of lien, which is actually you're possessing it, holding it, so it's called as possessory lien, which you can retain the possession of goods. Point by point, careful. The right remains with the unpaid seller till when? Till the payment of price. Once you don't have the right. You have to deliver the goods. Okay. In the case of credit sales, terms of credit should have expired. 3 months plus 6 months. Part delivery right exists with the remainder of the goods. 1000 chances of 500 with the remaining 500 execute. Okay. Unless agreed. Yes, you have to make a note. Unless agreed. Exclusive. Applicable even before deemed possession. What do you mean by deemed possession? Sending to work, giving the possession to a carrier or whatever. Second, termination or loss of lien. If it is delivered, even if it is taken for lawful possession, you say the lien is terminated. That's the right is terminated. Waiver of lien, like you're extending the period of credit 3 months, but you give another 3 months extra period. Unconditional delivery of goods, which means you don't have the right to dispose the goods. And by slogan, circumstances will happen. Points to order, no loss of lien if the seller has obtained a decree for the decree in the case file for the suit for the price of goods. So you have sued for the price of goods, then you should not execute this lien. Possession or transfer பண்ணிடு. Delivery பண்ணிடு. Okay. Second one, right of stoppage in transit. Stop further transit. Please highlight. Stop further transit. Note பண்ணுங்க. Stop further transit. Which means what? Here is the seller's place. Here is the buyer's place. It has to pass through a distance either by roadway or railway or waterway or airway ஏதோ ஒண்ணு. Okay. அப்படின்னா என்ன மீன் பண்றேன்? ரெண்டுமே ஒரே பிளேஸ்ல இல்லைன்னு மீன் பண்றேன். I just want to give that's not that. It's not there in one place. ஏன்னா ஒரு கேஸ் ஹேப்பன் ஆயிருக்கும் என்னன்னா okay, before going for this, let me go for this case. ஒரு godown. அந்த godown வந்து see godown is a separate business where you can maintain a large space and you can give it for rent and everybody can use for stocking it. Okay. Some places allotted A, B ன்னு வச்சிருக்காங்க. எல்லாம் buyer, seller, seller, buyer. Seller has a place in the godown, buyer has a place in the godown. Okay. All kept in lots and bales. They'll வச்சிருவாங்க. அதையும் நோட் பண்ணிப்பாங்க. They'll be having a record. The godown or the war finger certificate சொல்லுவாங்க. They'll be having a record in the goods of the yard, etc. etc. Both seller and buyer they have a godown. Okay. What the buyer is doing is he's buying the goods from the seller. இங்க என்ன நடந்திருக்கும்? பிசிக்கல் டெலிவரி நடந்திருக்காது. கரெக்டா? ஒரு சிம்பாலிக் ஒரு ரெக்கார்ட் டிரான்சாக்ஷன் மூலம் தான் நடந்திருக்கு. கரெக்டா? அப்ப இந்த இடத்துல நீங்க எப்படி டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பத்தி பேசுறீங்க? Please try to understand. Here you cannot talk about right of stoppage in transit because there's no transfer of goods at all. But there is, now come for this case, there is, seller is in a different place, buyer in a different place. So seller has to send the goods to the buyer. Need not worry who has to bear the expenses and all. Need not worry, that is secondary. So now the goods has to travel from this place to this place. It will go in transit. செல்லர் என்ன நினைக்கிறாருன்னா பையன் வந்து பணம் கொடுக்கணும் கொடுத்துருவாருன்னு சொல்லிட்டு டிரான்ஸ்போர்ட்ல அனுப்பிச்சிடுறாரு கார்கோல போட்டு அனுப்பிச்சிடுறாரு whatever it is. பையருக்கு இன்னும் போயிட்டே இருக்கு ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்கோங்க ஃபர்தர் டிரான்சிட்ல இருக்கு. It is not yet reached the buyer. It is on the way to the buyer. Now it comes என்ன இவர் இன்சால்வென்ட். அப்ப என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்கா he gets the right of stoppage in transit. Now try to understand this wordings. Right of stoppage in transit. Along with this, he can stop the further transit. What do you mean by further transit? More important. What do you mean by further transit? Probably, you just imagine this is Chennai and this is Trichy. Okay. Seller has sent the goods from Chennai to Trichy. It has reached the Trichy. Trichy reached. Now, buyer is insolvent. Can the seller execute this right? It has reached Tiruchina, whether it is in the possession of B's hands. Check பண்ணணும். திருச்சியில ரீச் ஆயிருக்கு பியோட பொசிஷன்ல வந்திருக்காங்க பையர் பொசிஷன்ல வந்திருக்காங்க பையர் பொசிஷன்ல வந்திருக்கான்னு சொல்லிட்டு லைன்ஸ் கொடுத்துருப்பாங்க செக் பண்ணணும். பையர் பொசிஷன்ல வந்திருக்கானா ப்ராபபிலி பையர் என்ன தெரியுமா பண்ணிருப்பான் ஏஜென்ட் அமைச்சிருப்பான். ஓகே நான் வந்து கஜேந்திரன் அனுப்புறேன் ஒரு குட்ஸ் வந்திருக்கோம் சென்னையில வந்து ஐ வில் கிவ் தட் ரெசிப்ட் ஆர் சம்திங் லைக் தட் இது காசு வாங்கிட்டு வந்துட்டு திருச்சிக்கு வந்து ரீச் ஆயிடுச்சு. But Gajendra is not at reached. Now, whether the seller will get the right to stoppage in transit? Yes. Yeah. Tiruchi வந்திருக்கே தவிர possession போகல. Please try to understand. It should not be in seller's possession. It should not be in buyer's possession. Transitல இருக்கணும். பையனோட கைக்கு போயிருக்க கூடாது. Okay, பையனோட கைக்கு போயிருக்கணும். So probably it might have reached place. பையன் எங்க இருக்கோ அதே பிளேஸ்ல இருக்கும். ஆனா பையனுக்கு இந்த இன்டிமேஷன் போயிருக்கா? Or buyer has taken the lawful possession of property. That's what we say. He has the right to stop further transit. Not only that, he can resist the actual possession. அப்படின்னா என்னது போல் பண்ணலாம் திரும்ப வந்து சென்னைக்கு கொண்டு போயிடலாம். The seller had not delivered. சொன்னதானே தெரியும் உங்களுக்கு. செல்லர் வந்து மனசுக்கு நினைச்சிட்டு இருந்தா பையர் வந்து இன்சால்வென்ட். கஜேந்திரன் என்ன பண்ணுவாரு போய் வாங்குவாரு. கஜேந்திரன் நான் என்ன பேசணும் கஜேந்திரன் தெரியாதுல்ல. நான் கஜேந்திரனுக்கு என்ன இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் தரேன் இந்த ரிசீட் கொண்டு போய் கூட அவங்க இதை தருவாங்க லோட தருவாங்க அவ்வளவுதான். That's what they will say. Okay. So all these things are happening between the seller and buyer. Seller has to clearly give the intimation to the courier agency or whatever it is. Say that don't deliver. அப்ப செல்லர் சொல்லிருக்கணும் பையர் இன்ஃபார்மண்டா இருக்கணும் இவ்வளவு கண்டிஷன்ஸ்ல வந்தா மட்டும் தான் எனக்கு இந்த ரைட் எக்ஸிக்யூட் பண்ணும். Conditions. First of all, you should be a unpaid seller. Seller must have parted the possession. Then only you can execute this right. Buyer should be insolvent. It should be subject to the provisions of the act. Yes, follow the act. And fifth one, until the buyer or agent or carrier or bailey of the buyer is in control of the possession. Until. Please make a note of it. திருச்சிக்கு வந்துச்சுன்னா உங்க கையில வந்துச்சுன்னா அர்த்தம் இல்ல. Please try to understand. Okay. Redelivery, obviously, who has to bear? No, generally, seller has to bear. Losses, seller has to bear. You cannot rescind the contract as the buyer shall make the payment and still ask for the delivery. You cannot சரி resale பண்ணிடலாம் அதெல்லாம் பண்ணக்கூடாது. Okay. சரி கேட்கலாம் இன்சால்வெண்ட் ஆயிட்டாரே இன்சால்வெண்ட் ஆனா என்ன ஓனர்ஷிப் ஆகணும்ல இங்க டெலிவரி பத்தி தானே நம்ம பேசிட்டு இருக்கோம் ஓனர்ஷிப் யாருக்கிட்ட நம்ம பேசவே இல்லையே ஓகே duration of transit it's a deemed possession it's an end of the right yes before its arrival it's reaching the destination seller will be treated as bailey for the buyer rejection of goods by the buyer is possible probably depending on whether the seller rejects or what and yes fifth one ship chartered by the buyer இது நடக்கும் செல்லர் பையர் இந்த பையர் என்னோட ஷிப் வந்து சென்னை வழியா வருது அனுப்பிச்சிடுங்க எங்க மேம் திருச்சியில ஹார்பரே இல்ல கதைக்கு வேணும் சென்னை வழியா வருது என்னோட ஷிப் தான் which means what buyer is having the full control over the ship or may not be having control if the buyer is having the full control over the ship இந்த ரைட் வராது ஏன் பையனோட ஷிப் ஆயிடுதுல்ல sometimes வந்து buyer will not have the full control over the ship அப்போ த்ரூ பையர்ஷிப் வந்தாலும் அது யாரோட பொசிஷன்ல வரல பையர்ஸ் பொசிஷன்ல வரல ஏன்னா அந்த ரெண்ட் கொடுக்குறாங்க இல்லையா இப்ப நான் பஸ் வாங்கி ரெண்ட் கொடுக்குறேன்ல அந்த மாதிரி ஷிப்பை வாங்கி ரெண்ட் கொடுப்பாங்க க்ரூஸ் ஷிப் ஓகே so buyer will not have the control buyer is not having the control means buyer lawful possession வரணும் buyer is having control over the ship means definitely once the loading is done by the seller obviously it becomes buyer's property buyer possession okay. So it depends on the status of the ship, the master of the ship or the carrier or agent of the buyer. We are the control of the basically. Okay. So fifth point, not repeated or many number of times, but still not very more. Wrongful refusal to the buyer by the carrier or bailey. Yes, transit is deemed to be at the end. Tapa refuse பண்றது. And part delivery, reminder goods execute ஆகும். Okay. A comparison with respect to right of lane and right of stoppage in transit is often repeated. Right of lane, yes, you can retain the possession of the goods. Buyer insolvent or solvent is immaterial. Whereas in the case of stoppage in transit, you can regain the possession. That's the only major difference, especially objective question writers. Please be aware of it. Right of lane, retain the possession. It's in your hands, you retain it. Whereas in the case of right of stoppage in transit, you have parked the possession, so you have to regain it. கொண்டு வரணும் உங்க பொசிஷனுக்கு ஓகே அது எப்படி கொண்டு வருவீங்க அந்த கொரியர் ஏஜென்ட்டுக்கு ஃபோன் பண்ணியாச்சு சொல்லணும் டெலிவர் பண்ணாதீங்க ஸ்டாப் பண்ணுங்க just giving a call it clearly indicate that you are going to regain the position okay regain உங்க கைக்கு வரது இல்ல லீகலா உங்க கைக்கு வரதா so it should be partnered with the position and buyer should be insolvent so end of right of lane is the starting point of the end of stoppage in transit do you agree end of right of lane is the starting point of stoppage in transit. Right of lane வந்து பொசிஷன் உங்க கையில இருக்கு. Right of stoppage in transit பொசிஷன் உங்க கையில இல்ல. So this becomes a beginning. Effect of subsale or pledge by the buyer. I'm not going to go line by line. Obviously, this follows from special contract. Okay. Right of resale. The next right. Yes, if it is perishable in nature, probably you need not give a notice to the buyer also. Please make a note. You need not give a notice to the buyer also. Buyer notice to the probably you want to give a notice to the buyer, yes, can, but you have to return the profit and if it is a loss, you can recover the loss. இந்த மாதிரி பெரிய ஆயிடுச்சுங்க அதனால நாங்க சேல் பண்ணிட்டோம் இவ்வளவு அமௌண்ட் சேல் ஆச்சு இருந்தாங்க ப்ராஃபிட் இல்ல லாஸ் ஆயிடுச்சு நீங்க கொடுக்கணும் அதெல்லாம் பண்ணிக்கலாம் இதுக்கு நோட்டீஸ் அனுப்பணும் நீங்க பட் சேல் பண்ண போற நோட்டீஸ் அனுப்ப வேண்டாம் பிகாஸ் இட்ஸ் பெரிஷபிள் நேச்சர் ஓகே if the other rights are exercised like who will get the right title இதெல்லாமே வந்து நார்மலா போற மாதிரி போயிடும் it should be expressed in the case of default of payment. Actually, no notice required, but you can recover the damages and the property of the goods is not passed. இதுக்கு பேர் என்ன தெரியுமா சொல்லுவாங்க costly lien. Costly lien what? Half of non-judicial. Right to withhold the delivery பண்ண மாட்டேன்னு சொல்றது. Okay. So this is a normal point. Fifth one, right against the buyer personally. Actually, this is the seller's remedy for breach of contract of sale. This is the seller's remedy. ஏன்னா குட்ஸ் பாஸ் பண்ணியாச்சு வேற என்ன பண்ண முடியும் யூ கேன் சீ ஃபார் த பிரைஸ் The buyer wrongfully neglects, he refuses to pay. Property may be passed or may not be passed, may not be appropriated. You need not worry. You're talking about the unpaid seller, payment order paid. Sue for damages, yes, go and follow Indian Contract Act. Repudiation of contract obviously becomes anticipatory breach. And sue for interest. தெரியும்ல? Probably 110 rupees. 100 rupees நான் நீங்க தந்தா 100 rupees கொடுத்துருக்கணும். I bought it for 110 rupees. So 10 rupees is the loss. This is for 1 lakh number of quantity. So 10 lakh rupees will be claimed as damages. So interest on price from the date of delivery and when the price is payable as per the specific agreement. Or it can be notified by the. See, this is a talking with respect to unpaid seller. Actually, it's a remedy for the unpaid seller. என்னென்ன right execute பண்ணாட்டு. But what about buyer's remedy against the seller? Buyer says he will not deliver the goods. Or the buyer says he will repudiate the contract. Or the delivery is not with respect to the goods which I ordered, non-conforming goods. அப்போ buyer rejects and he can go for revoking the SSS. நீ என்ன அனுப்பு நான் சொன்னது நீ அனுப்பல இந்த கான்ட்ராக்டை வேண்டாம் சொல்லணும். So this is about the cases of breach. Remedies பார்க்கலாமா? Remedies, you can claim for non-delivery as per the Indian Contract Act, wrongful negligence or refusal, contract cancel பண்ணலாம், sue for specific performance, sue for breach of warranty, sue for anticipated breach, sue for interest or special damages. In case if this question is asked, there are 6 remedies only. நீங்க பாட்டு கதையை எழுதாதீங்க. நிறைய பேர் பண்ற தப்பு இதுதான். நமக்கு நிறைய பாயிண்ட் ஞாபகம் வரும். ஏன்னா நம்ம நிறைய எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ் படிச்சிருப்போம். அது இதுன்னு போடுவோம். Don't write everything. Only these 6 points are there in the case of buyer's remedy. And under which cases these six points come? These 3 cases. Non-delivery, repudiating the contract and delivering non-conforming goods. In the 3 cases, the 6 remedies. You have to be very clear of. And tax and contract of sale. Yes, if there are increase or decrease of tax rates like purchase or sale, now we have GST, right? Maybe adjusted accordingly. It depends on. It's a stipulation in the contract. It depends on how you do it and how the other person did it. Okay. So we have one last heading pending related to auction. Just imagine the goods will be displayed. Okay, the goods will be displayed, and there will be many people sitting and bidding. Sitting on a bidding. Okay, okay, they'll be bidding. Okay, bidding means they'll be trying to get that goods purchased. அதனால ஒரு பிரைஸுக்கு மேல இன்னொரு பிரைஸ் கேட்பாங்க. Okay. Actually, what will happen is before this auction starts, they'll be given a specific time period for inspection. Usually, if the auction starts by 10 o'clock, now like 8 to 9 or 8:30 to 9:30, or 1 hour, half an hour, the complete list will be given and you can inspect the goods. That should be allowed. Buyer should be allowed to examine the goods. Okay. So what happens is this may be person A, this may be person B, C, D, or whatever it is. This is the first option coming. That is first, each and every good may be belonging to one single owner. Please highlight, may be belonging to one single owner, but each and everything will be separated as a different contract. Different sale, separate contract. Even though all the goods belonging to one person and all the goods are bought by one bidder. Object by object. Okay. So timing fix for inspection and other things and all. And there'll be a person on behalf of the owner who will be called as the auctioneer. Here, you will not call this person as seller. See, when you say a person as seller, he may be a owner. In most of the cases, he has to be the owner. And another sale பண்ண முடியும். And in some cases, transfer of non-owners when we talk about auction, it's a specific case where there will be no owner, but there is a person auctioneer who gets the complete right on behalf of the owner to sell the goods. Okay, first auctioneer. What this auctioneer will do is to safeguard the owner's good, he will reserve a price called as reserve price. Either கம்மியா கேட்டக்கூடாதுல்ல. He will reserve a price. And there will be different persons called as bidders. So here I have named as Mr. A, Mr. B, C, D, etc. Okay. And they'll be outbidding each other and one price will be taken by the auctioneer. See, இது வந்து என்ன தெரியுமா invitation to an offer. You just link all the parcels related to invitation offer. So auctioneer is inviting you to the offer. The bidders are the offerers. So who is the acceptor? Auctioneer. Acceptance எப்படி இருக்கணும்? Free consent. So you cannot compel the auctioneer to take the bid. He can take any bid. Usually, which bid he will take? He'll take the highest bid, usually, but he need not take the highest bid always. Okay. So this highest bid is what you call as the acceptance. Okay. How the acceptance can be done? Express, implied. Here we'll do an express acceptance. How? By tapping the hammer, or we'll be using the verbs. ஒரு தரம் ரெண்டு தரம் அந்த மாதிரி சொல்லுவாங்க. Okay. So hammer, or he'll be using some specific words. This is how he will accept it. So this is how the auction goes on. If the question or if the definition is asked, please try to use these words. It's a public sale where different intending buyers, so I want to highlight this word, public intending, different intending buyers assemble and try to outbid each other. This intending buyers, whom do we call as bidders, and the price involved usually this will be the highest bid sum. There will be a person called as the auctioneer. He is the agent of the owner of the goods. So directly all the provisions related to law of agency will hold good. Okay. He will be accepting it by how? Usually by fall of hammer, tapping on the hammer, or ringing bells. So any customary manner. The auctioneer need not disclose the fact that he is so selling. Please highlight. You don't often repeat it. He need not disclose what are the things he is selling. It's the optional right. Either he can accept the highest bid or reject and accept the lower bid. Offer to buy. What the bidders are actually doing? They quote a price. They're actually constituting to go for the bid. So they are actually offering to buy. So you can relate or refer to invitation to an offer. Okay, invitation to an offer. Whether a bid can be revoked. Yes, offer தானே ரிவோக் பண்ணிக்கலாம்ல. So அந்த price கேட்டா எனக்கு வேண்டாம்னு தோணுது. Yes, in an auction sale, a bid once given cannot be withdrawn. Do you agree? No, you can't withdraw. Okay. எப்போ withdraw பண்ண முடியாது? Accept பண்ணிட்டு withdraw பண்ண முடியாது. So it's actually incorrect. Bidding is an offer to buy the goods in an auction sale which can be revoked or withdrawn before accepted. Some special terms often repeated. One is called as knockout agreements. What they do is actually a group of persons will be forming themselves like A, B, C, D. ஏழு பேர் இருக்காங்கன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன். A, B, C, D, E, F. இப்போ நம்ம பிரைஸ் ஹைக் பண்ணிட்டே கேட்டோம்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன். இவங்க அதிகம் கேட்பாங்க, இவங்க அதிகம் கேட்பாங்க. சரி, சர்வீஸ் அவுட்பிட்டிங் தான். நீங்க ஒண்ணு கேட்பீங்க, அதை விட அதிகமா கேட்டாதான் எனக்கு அந்த ஆஃபரை வந்து அக்செப்ட் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி இருக்கும்போது என்ன பண்ணுவாங்கன்னா, ஏபிசி வந்து ஆக்சுவலி தேர் ஃபார்மிங் தெம்செல்ஸ். Why? To prevent competition. To prevent competition means what? Price ஏத்திரக்கூடாது. That's only the competition over here. At an auction sale and arrange that only one of them bid. ஏபிசி மூணு பேரும் ஒன்னா சேர்ந்துட்டு நம்ம மூணு பேர் சார்பில் நான் மட்டும் ஆப்ஷன்ல பிட் பண்றோம். அதற்கு பிறகு நம்ம டிவைட் பண்ணிக்கலாம். அந்த மாதிரி சொல்றது. இதுக்கு பேர் என்ன சொல்லுவோம்? நாக் அவுட் பண்றது. So we call this as knockout agreements. Points to ponder is very important. It's actually illegal ஆனா only when the intention is to commit a fraud on the third party is legal. See, ஒரு இடத்துக்கு போறேன், எவ்வளவு கம்மியா அந்த குட்ஸுக்கு ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்கும். அதுக்கு எவ்வளவு கம்மியா வாங்க முடியுமோ நான் வாங்குவேன். கரெக்டா? See, some goods related to antique furnitures, antique pieces எல்லாம் இருக்கும் இல்லையா, அதெல்லாம் வந்து எக்கச்சக்கமா காஸ்ட் போகுமே. Okay. Once I was just turning the newspaper தான் சொல்றேன். அதுல வந்து ஒரு 10 items லிஸ்ட் பண்ணியிருந்தாங்க. ஒன்றும் இல்லை, நீங்க கிளாஸ் முடிஞ்சோடனே சும்மா கூகுள் சர்ச் பண்ணி பாருங்களேன். What are the special items in it? ஒரு மாடலிங் கேர்ள், ஓகே, ஐ திங்க் ஷீ இஸ் ஃப்ரம் லண்டன், பேரும் நமக்கு. அவங்க வந்து ஒரு பார்ட்டிக்கு போயிருப்பாங்க. பார்ட்டிக்கு போயிட்டு ஷீ யூஸ் த டிஷ்யூ பேப்பர் டு வைட் ஃபார் லிப்ஸ்டிக். அந்த டிஷ்யூ பேப்பர் ஆப்ஷனுக்கு விட்டாங்க கோடிக்கணக்கில். ஓகே, இது என்ன மேம் இருக்கு? ஒருத்தவங்க வந்து ஹேர் ஸ்டைல்ல வந்து அந்த ஹேர் வந்து கீழே விழுந்துருக்கும். ஹேர் ஜஸ்ட் ஒரு ஏதோ ஒரு கட்டா இருக்குமா கீழே விழுந்துருக்கும். அந்த ஹேர் வந்து ஆப்ஷன் விட்டாங்க. ஓகே, சி எனக்கு ஒரு ஸ்டாரை பிடிக்கும். ஓகே, ஸ்டார் ஆர் வாட் எவர் இஸ் பிடிக்கும். அவங்களோட குட்ஸை நான் வச்சுக்கிட்டா எனக்கு பெருமை தானே. லைக் ஆக்டர் ஆர் ஆக்டர்ஸ் ஆர் எனி பொலிட்டிக்கல் பர்சன்ஸ் ஆர் சம்திங் லைக் தட், யூ கேட் அன் ஆட்டோகிராஃப். அது எவ்வளவு பத்திரமா பார்த்துட்டு வரணும். ஓகே, ஸோ if your intention is to commit a fraud against the third party, it's treated illegal. நம்ம எதுக்காக பண்றோம்? காம்படிஷனை பிரிவென்ட் பண்றது. நம்ம கொஞ்சம் லீகலா பண்ணிக்கலாம்னா ஃபைன், யூ கேன் டு இட். Second term, reserve or we call as the upset price. I discussed already. ரொம்ப low price ல வித்துறக்கூடாதுன்றதுக்காக பண்றது. Damping, yes, it's actually an overact or negative angle where a person dissuading a person from bidding or from raising the prices. How? You point out the defects. பாருங்க அந்த கால் உடஞ்சிருக்கு அந்த சேர். ஆன்டிக்கியா கால் உடஞ்சது இல்ல அது கால் உடஞ்சதுல எதுக்கு யூஸ் பண்ணும் எதுக்கு வாங்க வேணும்டே டிஃபெக்ட்ஸ் இல்லைன்னா ஆக்சுவலி டிஸ்டர்பிங் த பையர் டு எஸ்டிமேட் த ப்ராப்பர் பிரைஸ் ஆர் ஸ்கேரிங் ஹிம் அவே ஃப்ரம் அதர் டிவைஸ். அப்படின்னு என்ன பண்றீங்க நீங்க வந்து அவரை ப்ராப்பரா இன்வால்வ் பண்ண விடாம பண்றீங்க. இட்ஸ் ஓவர் ஆக்ட். பண்ண வேண்டாம் ஏன்னா இன்ஸ்பெக்ஷனுக்கு கொடுத்துருக்காங்க ஆப்ஷன் பட் ஹாஸ் given all the details. And fourth one, suffers or white bonus or buy bidders or decoy ducks where the seller will be actually forming a group only to raise the price. ஆக்சுவலா பிட்டர்ஸ் வருவாங்க. இந்த பிட்டர்ஸ் யாருன்னா செல்லர்ஸே ஃபிக்ஸ் பண்ண பர்சன்ஸா இருப்பாங்க. ஓகே, யூஸ்வலா இது காம்படிஷன் சொல்றோம் இல்லையா. ஏ ஒரு பிரைஸ் கேட்பாரு, ஏக்கும் பிக்கும் ஆகவே ஆகாது. ஏ வந்து 1 lakh கேட்டாரா, இது வந்து வேணும்ட்டே வந்து 1.1 lakh கேட்பாரு. ஏன்னா ஏக்கும் பிக்கும் ஆகும். ஓகே, நீங்க 1.1 lakh கேக்குறியா, ஐ ஆஸ்க் ஃபார் 1.2 lakh. கேட்டே வருவாங்க. ரொம்ப கடுப்பாயிட்டாங்கன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன், டைரக்டா 5 lakh சொல்லுவோம். இவன் ரொம்ப கொடுப்பாங்க டேரக்டா 10 lakhs எங்கேயோ போவோம், பயங்கரமா கண்ணாபின்னு போவாங்க. லாஸ்ட் பி வந்து வாங்குறதுக்கு வந்துருக்கவே மாட்டாரு, ஏத்தி விடுறதுக்காக வந்திருப்பாரு. ஓகே, பி இண்டிவிஜுவலா வந்தா பரவாயில்ல, ஆனா செல்லரே பி அம்சம் தான். ஏ வரான், பி அனுப்புனி, அவங்க 2 பேருக்கு ஆகாது, பி ஏத்தி விட சொல்லு, அவங்க பிரைஸ வாங்கிட்டு போயிடும், எனக்கு தான் ஆகும். இந்த மாதிரி பண்ணா அந்த பர்சன் இருக்காங்கல்ல, அவங்களுக்கு பேர் என்ன சொல்லுவாங்க, பஃபர்ஸ், ஒயிட் போனஸ் ஆர் பை பிடர்ஸ் ஆர் டிகாய்டர்ஸ். பை பிடர்ஸ் பைபாஸ் பண்றது, அமௌண்ட் வந்து பைபாஸ் பண்ணும். It's beautiful term. Actually, if the buyer, the highest bid போயிருக்கோம்ல, probably A might have got the bid வச்சுக்கோ. This sale can be made voidable. Actually, can avoid it. Okay. Think almost done. Yeah. One separate heading is there with respect to rules. Often repeated. If this question is asked, I request you to repeat all the points. Okay. Each plot will be treated as separate contract of sale. Fall of hammer or customary manner is what you call as sale gets completed, accepted. The right to bid may be reserved expressly by or on behalf of the seller, by the seller, or any other person. It is fraudulent, should not be a right notified. Okay. Fraudulent if the right to bid by the seller is not reserved, it is not lawful with the auctioneer. Probably he can take any price. Reserve price no. If there is a reserve price, it has to be actually notified. Okay. Then the buyer has the right to avoid the sale if the seller makes use of pretended bidding to raise the price. If the seller is using the buffers. Okay. Warranty is implied. Yes, the authority to sell is implied. To receive the price is implied. Yes, please make a note of it. The auctioneer is unaware of any defect in the title of his principal. Okay, so he becomes the agent. So அவருக்கு வந்து எந்த டிஃபெக்டும் இருக்கிற மாதிரி தெரியக்கூடாது. இது பிரின்சிபலோட தான் டவுட் வந்திருக்க கூடாது. குட் ஃபெய்த்ல தான் அவரோட ஆப்ஷன்ஸ் இருக்கு. And probably undertaking or guaranteeing the possession against the price paid to him by the purchaser is who has the right to execute this one, seller. Okay. Trading contracts involving rail or sea transit. The customs duty எல்லாம் ஒரே ஒரு எக்ஸாம்ல கேட்டிருக்காங்க. I just thought I can include it. ஒரே ஒரு வாட்டி தான் கேட்டிருக்காங்க. Some special cases where customs are involved and any other merchants are involved. Freight on board சொல்லுவாங்க. Freight on board or freight on rail. It is a buyer's risk. Once the seller boards the goods on ship, the expenses has to be borne by the seller and notified to the buyer that the buyer may insure. Okay. Contingency contractல பார்த்துருக்கோம்ல, என் வீட்டுக்கு வந்து சேர்ற வரைக்கும் ஷிப்ல வந்தாலும் பரவாயில்ல, ட்ரெயின்ல வந்தாலும் பரவாயில்ல, எதுல வந்தாலும் இன்சூரன்ஸ் போடணும். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி கேஸ். சிஐஎஃப் லைக் ஃப்ரைட் இன்சூரன்ஸ் எல்லாம் வரும். ஓகே. Expenses. What are the expenses? Boarding expenses, freight expenses, insurance. Actually, buyer has to pay and take delivery. That is means what? Transfer the documents, not the physical possession. Okay, the maid's receipt also long. Okay. Probably expenses till the destination, including the inland transit. The buyer is not bound to pay until the goods are ready for unloading, and all freight charges may be paid. Okay, the goods travel at the seller's door, but is not bound to insure. Insure பண்ணணும் அவசியம் இல்லை. Extra permission. So that's about this topic, the Sale of Goods Act. So you just give two or three readings, probably you'll have a different angle in understanding. Okay, actually, this is an easy act only. Only thing you have to give two or three readings, you have to be confident on understanding the words. Okay. So that's all for today. Thank you for thanks for joining.